This is
Right.
if I ever get.
I can see the agenda.
But if I go back.
Okay, I have to do paper because I can't get it to work on my computer.
Oh, sorry, no. I want to go through here.
Are we going to wing
Now
it
I
without the
can go in
computer?
here, and now I see something different. Live search, which she records all of the votes and stuff in it.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. We got the whole family together, but the computers aren't working.
Do what she does.
At least mine's not working.
We're going to boldly go forward where our ancestors used to. Welcome, everybody, to the special meeting of the Liquor Control Commission for March 1st, 2021. Please rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Simpson, attendance, please.
Commissioner Vito,
Here.
Commissioner Vogel,
Here.
Commissioner Papantos. Present. Commissioner Kruger,
Present.
Commissioner Lang,
Here.
Chairperson Horker.
Here.
About Commissioner Raffato.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Raffato.
I'm here.
I'm not having a good day. Okay, let's go.
We'll get through it. You have before you the minutes of the special meeting of October 5th, 2020. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Give the motion to Trustee Vogel and the second to Trustee Papantos. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vito,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Raffato,
Yes.
Commissioner Papantos,
Yes.
Commissioner Kruger,
Yes.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
Chairperson Horker.
Yes. Citizen concerns and comments. Clerk
There are
Simpson.
none.
Oh, okay. Brings us to the meat of the matter.
New business. 6A, consideration of request from Tuscany Wheeling LLC at 550 South Milwaukee Avenue to convert a current Class A liquor license to a Class AV liquor license.
Mr. Spondilis, what do we have here?
Thank you very much. As the title indicates, Tuscany is a business in good standing that currently has an active liquor license. They are seeking to add video gaming to their establishment. They have begun the process with the state and are waiting for a license from them, which they can get once this body has approved the license. I am happy to answer any questions.
To my left, to my right, nobody seems too eager to ask questions. If there are no questions or comments,
I'll make a motion we approve.
Commissioner Vogel, seconded by who? Commissioner Lang. Clerk Simpson, roll call, please.
Commissioner Vito,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Raffato,
Yes.
Commissioner Papantos,
Yes.
Commissioner Kruger,
Yes.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
Chairperson Horker.
Yes, we need a motion to adjourn from the Liquor Commission hearing.
So moved.
Give the motion to Commissioner Raffato, the second to Commissioner Papantos. We're all here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. I would now like to call to order the regular meeting of the Village Board for March 1st, 2021. Clerk Simpson, roll call, please.
Commissioner Vito,
Here.
I'm sorry, Trustee Vito. Trustee Vogel,
Here.
Trustee Raffato,
Here.
Trustee Papantos,
Present.
Trustee Kruger,
Present.
Trustee Lang,
Here.
President Horker.
Here. Tonight you have before you the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1st, 2021. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Trustee Kruger, second Trustee Papantos. Roll call.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos,
Yes.
Trustee Raffato,
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
Excellent. Clerk Simpson, proclamations. We have a couple.
National Social Work Month, March 2021. The slogan is "Social Workers Are Essential." The social work profession for decades has been dedicated to improving human well-being and enhancing the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable among us. This year's Social Work Month theme, Social Workers Are Essential, embodies the heroic contributions of the social work profession to our nation, including the work social workers have done to heal our nation during these times of pandemic, racial unrest, economic uncertainty, and political divisiveness. Social workers have always been present in times of crisis, helping people overcome issues such as death and grief, and helping people in communities recover from natural disasters such as fires, hurricanes, and earthquakes. Social workers have helped this nation live up to its values by successfully advocating for equal rights for all people, no matter their race, sexual identity, gender expression, culture, or religion. Social workers work in all parts of our society to empower people to live to their fullest potential. School social workers have worked with families and schools throughout the pandemic to ensure students reach their full academic and personal potential. Social workers play a crucial role in our nation's healthcare system and have played a key role in the nation's response to COVID-19 in helping individuals, families, and communities cope with the epidemic. Social workers are one of the largest groups of mental health care providers in the United States and work daily to help people, whether in person or remotely, overcome substance use disorders and mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. Social workers will continue to stand ready to assist our nation in overcoming present and future challenges, including pushing for racial equity, ending gun violence, improving health care and mental health care, and for all, and urging lawmakers to adopt immigration reforms. In recognition of the numerous contributions made by America's social workers, Patrick Corker, President, proclaims the month of March 2021 as National Social Work Month and call upon all citizens to join the National Association of Social Workers in the Village of Wheeling in celebration and support of the social work profession.
Thank you, Clerk Simpson. I'll be reading.
Number 2 is National Athletic Training Month, March 2021. You going to
Go ahead.
Yeah,
read it?
yeah, go ahead. No, it's fine.
Okay. Athletic trainers have a long history of providing quality health care for athletes and those engaged in physical activity based on specific tasks, knowledge, and skills acquired through their nationally regulated educational processes. Athletic trainers provide prevention of injuries, recognition, evaluation, and aggressive treatment, rehabilitation, health care administration, education and guidance, compassionate care for all. The National Athletic Trainers Association represents and supports more than 45,000 members of the athletic training profession employed in many settings, including professional sports, college and universities, high schools, clinics and hospitals, corporate and industrial settings, performing arts, and military branches. Leading organizations concerned with athletic training and healthcare have joined together in a common desire to raise public awareness of the importance of the athletic training profession and to emphasize the importance of quality healthcare within the aforementioned settings. Such an effort will improve healthcare for athletes and those engaged in physical activity and promote athletic training as healthcare professionals. Patrick Corker, President of the Village of Wheeling, do hereby proclaim the month of March as National Athletic Training Month in the Village of Wheeling, and he urges all citizens of Wheeling to learn more about the importance of athletic training.
Thank you, Clerk Simpson.
Mr. Jerby had asked for us to present this evening. He said he would be here. I don't see him, but in case he's in the hallway, the proclamation is available. If not, we will certainly make sure that he gets it promptly.
Okay. There's no appointments, no administrations of oaths. Clerk Simpson, citizens' concerns and comments.
Members of the public may address the board with comments regarding issues related to village business. No citizen shall speak for more than 5 minutes without consent of the board. Members of the general public who wish to address the board must sign the request to speak form prior to the commencement of the public meeting.
And just as a reminder, this is a time for citizens to make comments and express their concerns, and for the board to listen. Neither the board nor staff will be answering questions. Clerk Simpson?
Ms. Tatiana?
Hello, everyone. I feel like I'm having deja vu here again. So I know that today is gonna happen, the voting on chickens. So, and I first raised my concern a few months ago, and now the board gonna probably issue a final decision on that. So despite of the outcome of this, I just wanted to thank all of you guys for just considering the issue, all the pros and cons of it. I wanted to thank you Mr. Clicker for researching it and putting together a proposal for it and presenting it to different boards. And, especially allocating the resources to all this process during such a hard year for everyone. And I really hope that the board takes in consideration all the benefits of chicken keeping, I guess, and that there is, especially on such a immaterial issue, because we're talking only about a few chickens here, and given the Rolling Meadows example, as Mr. Clicker explained, there's only a few licenses going to be awarded for the village, and I think there were only a few takers for it in Rolling Meadows, so I really think it shouldn't be an issue at all. And again, I really hope that you consider all the benefits for residents, and I really wanted to thank you all, so thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson?
Pat, have the truck drivers that park on your lot told you about the hundreds of letters they've gotten from the village saying that they now need a license, a business license in town? Probably not, because the other truck driving parking lots that are actually licensed, that have business license and that have permeated, they've put concrete on their parking lots, they're being harassed because they park in town. The village is now claiming that they operate a business in town simply because they're parking in one of our several commercial truck parking lots. And that, I believe, is because we are in a real money problem. We're having serious money problems. On November 2nd, I was before this board telling you that various businesses contacted me, telling me they got a letter from the village saying that they were not going to get paid with the usual direct deposit. I brought that to your attention. I said, you need to supervise your sole employee. We are money strapped. He's not managing it right. You are not supervising him. And this is the explanation that he gave. Now and
ACH withholdings are actually just a security measure? And Mr. Monchain is in the building. If the board would like to hear directly from him, the village is doing an audit on all ACH accounts simply to make sure that the bank that we are paying is actually connected to the vendor that is receiving the money.
That's baloney. That is just a quick, when you get direct deposit for many years, there's no sudden, we're going to stop and make sure this is really your account. That's just, it's not, you need to supervise him. We're having some very serious budget issues here, okay? Patrick, I am very disturbed that, as village president, that you were either deceptive or ignorant in your interview with the Daily Herald when you said this. Sorry about that.
Where's there a deficit? Where's there a deficit?
So anybody listening to that would be under the clear impression that when your opponent, the challenger, said we're having a significant deficit, and you're saying where is that? Like you don't know. You either don't know that we have a deficit, or you're misleading the public or the Daily Herald. Okay, so then later in that same interview, you said, oh, I did think we have a certain amount of a deficit, but it's not, to the extent, that you're alleging. So I found that to be very dishonest. So you have been focusing on the general fund deficit, which is one of 13 funds, and that's something like 1.6 or some number under 2 million in a deficit spending. But when I went to and I looked at what you published, you do the math, the total budget, 84,000 minus 90, or 84 million minus 92 million is $7,696,000, $7.7 million deficit. So we're in deficit spending, and I'm really concerned about this. This is, and I'm really concerned about your deception in that interview. You said you'd have to look it up. That was very, very disappointing. So I had to ask, you also told the Daily Herald in 2017 when we elected you, you answered the question that you were going to institute an absolute prohibition on nepotism. Okay, I had to ask for the most recent year financial report because for some reason it wasn't published. Why wouldn't the 2019 Treasurer's report not be published? Because your brother got $29,000 in contracts from the village that year. Now, you told me the reason your brothers were unhappy that you were running in 2017 is then, you know, they wouldn't be able to get contracts with the village. So Joe's Concrete and Paving, which operates out of your property there on 910 McHenry Road, it's industrial, it's I-3. You don't have I-3. You're operating, Google Earth shows you've got a commercial truck parking lot. It's not, there's no concrete on it, that's I-3. You've got inside that building that says vegetables, it looks like a barn on the outside. The business license your brother has with the village says he does semi-truck repairs. He manages the fleet. That's I-3. You can't have that. You can't have I-3 operations.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
You're also renting apartments there.
Ms.
Yeah, oh
Ms.
yeah, and
Wilson.
you don't get annual inspections
Ms.
from the village
Wilson,
when you are
your time's
owning
up.
a rental property.
night.
There's a lot of illegal businesses there.
night,
You
Ms.
don't have
Wilson.
credibility to be village president.
Good night. Always entertaining.
That contempt is not appreciated. I'm advocating for the public dime and for hardworking people who run their businesses honestly, Patrick. Contempt is not
night.
appreciated.
Quit spending village money then.
Anybody else? No. So, in an effort to clarify the whole budgetary thing, Mr. Spondilis, you want to, do we have
Thank
anything
you.
we can do to clear up the whole
Thank you.
show?
I've asked Finance Director Kaplan to be here this evening because it seems that there's a spreadsheet being circulated to the public and to the newspapers that shows some misinformation, and I thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to educate the public on how the village budget works through fund accounting and...
That spreadsheet was published
Good night.
on your
Ms.
website.
Wilson, your time is up. Sit down.
As indicated, the spreadsheet was published on our website, shows exactly how our monies are allocated between the various funds. And I have asked Finance Director Kaplan to spend a few moments explaining to the public how fund accounting works and how the public can look at that document and come to some reasonable understanding of the village's financial situation. So if you would, Director Kaplan, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address this. From an educational standpoint, as you heard tonight, there's some information that's out there in the community that would suggest that we have a $7.7 million budget deficit, and I just want to reassure the board that that is not the case, and that more importantly, that the village is doing well financially. And really what this comes down to, I think, is just a misunderstanding of how municipal budgets work, and as the village manager indicated, fund accounting works. So I just have 4 slides for you tonight, so this shouldn't take as long as a budget hearing. But the first one shows the spreadsheet that was included in the board agendas packet for December 21st, 2020. That was the night that you approved the 2021 budget ordinance. And that spreadsheet, which shows all of the funds of the village, including the total revenues and total expenditures, and I know you can't read this, but I just wanted you to be able to be aware of what it looks like if you want to look at it on the village's website. This was the attachment to the budget ordinance. So I think the misunderstanding has to do with the concept of total budgeted revenues versus total budgeted expenditures. And For those of you who've sat through our budget workshops, over the past several years, I don't think that I ever have made reference to total revenues and total expenditures because it's just simply not a meaningful number. Either one of those are not meaningful numbers. And that's because the general fund, as you're aware, is the primary operating fund of the village. There are approximately 16 or so other funds that all have their own sources of revenue and really, in a sense, act as separate companies. And I use that word companies lightly because they're not companies, they're not private organizations, but they serve separate functions, and that's why I use the word companies here. But we always focus on the general fund budget because, again, it's the major operating fund, and it's important to look at that budget to determine whether we have a surplus or deficit. But I would argue that it's not even enough to look at just 1 year. You have to look at the trend over several years as far as the general fund budget is concerned, because you may have a deficit in the general fund for 1 year, like we do this year, but that could be caused by an economic downturn. And in this case, there's probably no better example of that than COVID-19. We have a budget deficit this year that's entirely caused by COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on our businesses and therefore the revenue that the village receives from those businesses. So although you may have a deficit in 1 year, if you don't have a trend of several deficits, then you probably just have an economic downturn that's going to correct itself at some point. Otherwise, if you have a number of deficits in a row, you may have a structural issue that you have to deal with. And those of you who've been on the board long enough will recall that back in 2008, after the Great Recession, we did have a structural issue, and we addressed that by eliminating a number of positions and programs and so forth. But that's not what's happening this year. This is all about COVID-19. The other point that I wanted to make, and the reason that you can't look at total revenues versus total expenditures, is that many of our funds are capital funds, and those expenditures fluctuate from year to year depending on the level of activity in those funds, how many capital projects we're doing that year versus the next year. And a good example of that this year is the Fire Station 23 project. We have $3.4 million budgeted this year for that project. Now, the Capital Projects Fund only brings in about $3 million a year in revenue. So because we're using Capital Projects Fund reserves, or our savings account, for lack of a better term, to pay for that project, it looks like we have, and you'll see this in a minute, a pretty significant deficit in our Capital Projects Fund, which also contributes to the quote-unquote deficit if you're comparing total budgeted revenues to expenditures. That's because we can't recognize savings as a source of revenue like we do with sales tax or food and beverage tax or property tax and so forth. Same thing goes for the Water and Sewer Fund. If you were to look at that fund this year, you'd see that, and you'll see this in a minute, that we have a deficit in that fund too, but that's because we're doing a water main replacement project, which we do every 2 or 3 years. And because we have a lot of capital activity, we've essentially saved up for that, and we're using reserve funds to pay for it. And then my final example would be the SURF fund. And although this is not true this year, an example might be a year in which we decide it's time to replace a fire truck. We're going to buy a new fire truck for whatever fire trucks cost these days, $1.2 million or something like that. And that's going to create the appearance of a deficit in the SURF fund. But as you all know, we systematically set aside funds on an annual basis for the eventual replacement of our vehicles and other equipment. And so even though we're spending a lot in 1 year, we've been saving for that for a number of years, and that's why it looks like we have a deficit. So the final point is that the village often uses reserves, which are like a savings account, that we've built up over many years. And because that money is not shown as revenue, it makes it look like we have a deficit, and that can be interpreted as a sign of financial weakness. In fact, it's a sign of financial strength because we don't have to borrow for those projects. And so this is really, it summarizes the spreadsheet that I showed you before that you couldn't read, and it shows our budget for 2021. And I've highlighted in yellow some of the significant areas where we have surpluses or deficits, and I just want to focus on a couple of those. But you'll see at the bottom, here is the $7.7 million. If you compare all of our revenues to all of our expenditures, you'd say, well, we have a $7.7 million deficit. But again, the general fund has a deficit. It's true because of COVID-19, but I expect that 2022 will be better and 2023 will be even better than that as we get past the pandemic. The TIF funds have a pretty significant surplus, and that's because there's not as much development activity this year as there has been in prior years. So there's more revenue coming in than expenditures going out. And again, this is what I was referring to before. If you look at the capital projects fund, you'd say we have a serious problem here because we have a $5.2 million budgeted deficit. But again, that's being driven by Fire Station 23 and some other projects that we're doing this year that we have money in reserve for. And there's absolutely no problem with the capital projects fund. Same thing applies to water and sewer. So that's why that number at the bottom line.
Michael, can you go back to that slide for 1 second?
Yeah.
Would it simplify it to say that the surpluses on some of these funds in past years is actually, it's removed from this slide entirely?
Yes.
And as you said, it's put in a savings account?
That's right.
And then drawn down? Would that make it more palatable, more understandable to some
Yes,
people?
That's right.
So it's nothing more than you earn X number of dollars working, and you set aside X percent as a savings account, and 3 years from now you need a new roof, you pull it out of savings, and that's what the village is doing. They're setting it aside.
Right.
That may make it a little more understandable. There's certain people that are, spreading these rumors that we have this deficit.
Right. It's really very similar to the analogy that you just gave. If you were setting aside money in your personal checking account every year for several years because you knew eventually you're going to have to replace your roof, well, that doesn't mean you're running a deficit in your checking account the year that you replace the roof.
And you're not going to pay taxes on it again at a later date.
Right.
Michael, could you add
Michael?
another column?
I'm sorry?
Could you add another column to this slide?
To show the reserves?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that.
I think that would be pretty clear then, that we have money to tap from.
Yep. On that spreadsheet that I showed on the first slide, it does actually, of course you can't read it, but it does actually show the drawdown of reserves, but you have to be really paying close attention to it.
Director Kaplan, 2 questions quickly. Is this analogous to a college fund that people start at the birth of their child and they save money every year and put it aside so that they have money to pay for the tuition that first year of college, and they're paying whatever it costs these years? Is kind of a big hit, and they're probably not putting that amount in, but they've saved for it for over time?
Right. Yeah, I can relate to that because I have a kid in college right now. But
mine are out.
You set aside money every year if you're able to do that, and then when that tuition bill comes due, you pay that out of your college savings account. But you're not going in the hole that year for whatever college cost, $25,000, $30,000 a year now, or more.
And then on the TIF funds, and this does show a nice surplus, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the reason, because we have a project that's starting very soon as far as London Crossing, but we now pay as you go, not providing the money up front, so that surplus, but when it does come time to pay, we may see a drawdown. And what do we do with surplus funds on some of these TIFs?
Well, the village board has a long history of declaring surpluses in each of the 4 TIF districts. There used to be 5, of course, but one terminated recently. And off the top of my head, I can't remember the number, but in the tens of millions of dollars, the village board has declared surpluses and returned that money to all of the taxing districts. Most of it goes to the school districts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Trustee Kruger, you were trying to say something?
Thank you, Mr. President. Director Kaplan, you mentioned that the last time the village had a structural issue with deficit spending, we took care of it with losing basically 41 employees. And so in this case, if this $7.7 million deficit that seems to be an internet sensation, if we really had a structural problem of $7.5 million, would we be losing staff? Would we be forced to make decisions like that? And you would have brought that to our attention quite early, wouldn't you?
Yes. The village manager and I, as the finance director, would never allow that to go unaddressed. We would never allow ourselves to get to the point where we had a $7.7 million budget deficit. So that's why it just makes no sense.
That's why I wanted to point it out. I feel like I've been here long enough that if this was structural and we were seeing this continual downturn, we would be making decisions right away to fix the problem.
And that's what happened between 2008 and 2010 is, for the whole world changed, and our revenue was down substantially, and we knew that we had to make structural changes so that we didn't deplete all of our reserves.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Trustee Rufato has a question, then Trustee Lang.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the $1.6 million, which is really our forecasted deficit.
Yeah.
So that was what we forecasted December for fiscal year 2021.
Right.
That could conceivably, like 2020, where we started the year with a surplus. Through the year, we saw that we were going to have a deficit. And at the end of the year, we actually had no deficit. And this is conceivable that it could happen here. This is just a point in time.
It is.
And that has to be understood. And it's unfortunate that some people are spreading lies and falsehoods about the village and the hard work we have done to try to keep these numbers in check, if you will. And I appreciate all of the work that you've done. And hopefully these lies will be stopped and they will stop spreading.
Yeah, you're right that this is a point in time. When we send you the budget ordinance in December, it's based on the best information that we have available at that time. And last year was a perfect example of how quickly that can change. In December of 2019, we didn't really know much about COVID-19, so we sent you a budget that had a surplus of $722,000 in the general fund. Well, January, February, and March changed all that, and as it was, though, we still think that we're going to finish 2020 with a small surplus of about $80,000. And I say we think because the auditors haven't done all their work, and there could be some audit adjustments that change that. But that's what it looks like as of today, and that's really remarkable given the fact that our revenue was substantially down in 2020 because of COVID-19. It's amazing that we would be anywhere near even a balanced budget. One of the reasons is because we did get over $700,000 in federal aid.
But every municipality and governing body has received those.
Right.
So, but we were just wise in how we managed our money throughout this.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rufato. Trustee Lang, you had something?
It was about the general fund, and I wanted Michael to speak about that, the deficit, but he did a pretty good job explaining where we're at on that and where our future is. We still have more government funding that is coming our way as well, and that will write down that number.
Yep, and I was just about to get to that, so.
Go for it.
So then the question is, well, how is the village doing financially? And as I indicated in the beginning, we're doing very well. We've had, if 2020 turns out to be a small surplus as we think, that will be 6 consecutive years of surpluses going back to 2015. During that time, the general fund had in aggregate $8.2 million in surplus, and the village board decided to transfer $6.2 million of that to the pension funds and the capital projects fund. The transfers to the capital projects fund were to pay for the 2 fire station projects, and that, you know, I spoke about that earlier. That's why you see this year a large quote-unquote deficit in the capital projects fund. But that was pre-funded, for lack of a better term. And then finally, even with those transfers, our fund balance grew from $14.4 million to $15.6 million, and those balances were consistently between 36 and almost 39% of annual operating expenditures. And as you've heard me say many times, our policy is to maintain 25% of annual operating expenditures, so we've been well above that. If we were not doing well financially, you would see those fund balance numbers coming down and those percentages coming down, and that would be your first warning sign that something is not right. And then my final slide here is, again, we expect a small surplus for last year. We do have a $1.6 million deficit in the general fund this year, but that could easily, to Trustee Rufato's point, that could easily turn into a rather large surplus. You know, right now at the federal level, Congress is debating this $1.9 trillion stimulus package, and that contains a lot of funding for state and local governments. If we get more federal aid, that deficit could very easily be a surplus. And then the village has contributed $2.9 million in surplus funds over the years to its pension funds, which is another sign of financial strength.
Excuse me, Director Kaplan, that's in addition to what we budget for the pension funds.
That's right. That's in addition to what the actuary determines we have to contribute to the funds.
Thank you.
And then you've heard me say before, we're on track to have no property tax levy related debt by 2030, and then just a small tiny amount of water and sewer fund debt in 2031 and 2032. And by that I mean we have a couple of payments that need to be made in those years that are under $300,000, which to you and me is a lot of money, but to the water and sewer fund budget is not much at all. And then the final point is that, you know, you don't have to take my word for this. The bond rating agencies have given the Village of Wheeling a AA+ rating, that's by Fitch, and AA with Standard & Poor's. Those are the second and third highest ratings a municipality can receive. And I can guarantee you that if we were running a deficit of $7.7 million, they would not be giving us bond ratings like that. In fact, they would be downgrading us significantly. So that's all I have.
And when was the last time we issued bonds?
The last time we issued bonds?
Yeah.
We just did last year refunding bonds.
Okay.
And and that was to lower the interest rate on the debt. We did that in 2016 as well. So the last time we issued new bonds was 2012.
2012.
And those were water sewer bonds,
And those were to pay for the water meter replacement program.
And those bonds are paid for by our water bills.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask Director Kaplan a question, just so that it's very clear? This isn't magic. This is government finance. This isn't Wheeling finance. This is a
Right.
question. This is the way municipalities, this is the way government functions from a budgetary standpoint. So I just want to be clear that this isn't Wheeling created some magic here to make it confusing. This is government finance.
When the auditors come, this is what they expect?
Right, right. And by the way, I'm glad you brought the auditors up. They're another source that if they saw that there were serious financial concerns, they would share that with you as well. So you don't have to just believe me, but hopefully you will.
I believe you, Mr. Kaplan.
Thank you.
Chief's done.
Again.
What?
Me again.
Oh, it says.
Wolf Road.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Spondilla.
I have a second item that I promise will be much shorter, but equally as informative. It is concerning the Wolf Road project that you have heard us talk about for many years. Of course, we have lived through the last year of construction on Wolf Road. It is an IDOT project that is part of a jurisdictional transfer that we signed on to 5 years ago and have been waiting forever for the state to finally initiate the project. They did that last year. We're all well aware of that. What we were notified of last week is that the state would like to move the schedule of one of the phases up a month. And that is good because the intention is to have the least bit of impact on the schools. So specifically what I'm saying is there is a stage of the project where southbound traffic will be restricted. And we knew this. We have detour routes. This was always planned to happen starting May 1st, and it was going to last through October 1st. The state would like to move that up to March 29th, which will allow the project then to finish in October. We, of course, will be working with the school and the park district and all those who are impacted. Pace as far as the bus routes. Certainly this is going to be an inconvenience, so we will make sure that IDOT has detour maps, letters prepared and mailed to all affected residents, reader boards erected so that everyone understands the new traffic patterns in advance of any closure. So while this is an IDOT project, we're going to be working with them as closely as possible because it affects our residents. So this is new news to us, so we will stay on top of it and publicize it as much as possible and make a challenging situation as easy as possible, all with the recognition that this project will definitely benefit us in the long run, as this is a full reconstruct and widening project, as you recall. And again, it is a jurisdictional transfer, which means it will become a Village of Wheeling road, and that is in line with the way IDOT has been managing their maintenance programs the last few years. They're offsetting their, or they're offloading their assets to the local municipalities. So this is not new news other than the timing, and we will make sure that everyone is made well aware of the impact.
Manager Spondilis, can we make sure that's on the village website and Facebook pages, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spondillis. Now Chief Dunn. Chief Dunn.
Good evening. I just wanted to report back to the board that we have activated and begun our body-worn camera program. We've replaced the 15 dash cameras that we have, and we have deployed the 55 body-worn cameras. We started that operation last Friday at 3 o'clock, and no issues, no problems so far, and we're ready to move forward with it. And I'll report back if we have any issues or concerns, but I don't anticipate any. It's a program that's been, there's equipment that's been used by other municipalities, law enforcement agencies, and we're in compliance with state laws, standards, and anxiously awaiting the July 1st issuance of new laws and standards, and we'll adjust to those too.
Thank you, Chief. Now back to our regularly scheduled meeting. We have the consent agenda. Clerk Simpson, will you please?
Number 11, consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered after all other agenda items. 11A, resolution approving a one-year contract extension with Hoare Construction Incorporated for the jointly bid 2021 sewer lining project in the amount of $152,649.50. Item B, resolution approving a one-year contract extension with Schroeder and Schroeder Incorporated for the 2021 sidewalk and miscellaneous concrete removal and replacement program in the amount of $39,943.29. Item C, resolution approving change order number 5 and 6 to the construction contract with W.B. Olson Incorporated of Northbrook, Illinois for the demolition and construction of a new fire station 23 for a combined credit of $12,181. Item D, resolution authorizing the village president to execute a budget revision to a grant agreement regarding congregate meals provided by the village of Wheeling. Item 11E, resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving the purchase of a license plate recognition system from Vigilant Solutions LLC.
Yes, I would like this moved to the regular agenda, as you suggested earlier. Any item on the consent agenda, a member of the public can ask it to be moved to the regular.
Can I finish reading them, please?
Certainly, yes.
An amount not to exceed $36,260 in FY 2021. Item 11F, resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving upgrades to 4 computer parking terminals by Total Parking Solutions in an amount not to exceed $14,880 in FY 2021. Item 11G, resolution authorizing acceptance of the State of Illinois previously bid contract with CDW Government LLC for the purchase of Hewlett-Packard personal computers in the amount of $67,810.80. Item 11H, ordinance amending Chapter 4.32 of the Village of Wheeling's Municipal Code, alcoholic liquor dealers, specifically Section 4.32.085, to increase the authorized number of Class AV and decrease the authorized number of Class A liquor license. Item 11I, resolution authorizing the village president and village clerk to execute a renewal of lease agreement between the village and the Solid Waste Agency of Northbrook, Cook County, Swank, in order to extend the lease of space in the village's public works facility located at 77 West Hintz Road, Wheeling, Illinois.
All right, Ms. Wilson.
Yes, each of the items that say you're waiving competitive bidding, there were several of them. I'd like you to move them to the regular agenda so that they can be discussed. We are in deficit spending, even if the entire budget is something you consider not a deficit. The general fund still has a $1.6 million deficit, and you just get more bang for your buck when you go with the competitive bidding. When you waive competitive bidding, we don't get the most bang for our buck. And our reserves have come down significantly from 114 down to 108 between 2017 and 19.
Your
So
speech
please
was-
put it out to competitive
Can you
bidding.
hand it to me or Jim?
Which ones are we?
It looks like
Jim, what are we doing?
11E and F waive competitive bidding. So 11E and F become 13E and F.
I'm sorry, which ones again?
E and F become 13E and F.
13E and F?
Yes. 11E and F become 13E and F.
Wait, 11 is, tell me when we get to it.
11E and F.
11E and 11F become 13.
E and F.
Thank you.
With the exceptions as noted, I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Rufato, second trustee Kruger, roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. We have no old business. That moves us to 13A, Clerk Simpson.
13A, ordinance accepting Title IV taxes, business regulations, and licenses, Section 4.08.140, fees by classification of the Wheeling Municipal Code in order to reduce certain license fees.
Mr. Kaplan, what do we have?
Got a promotion, you're a trustee now.
Sorry?
He said Mr.
Oh, mister? Oh, I thought he said trustee.
No.
I got
No
that
promotion
down.
yet.
Gave him a demotion.
But then more of a demotion.
I think it comes with a reduction in pay, so watch it.
I've seen the budget, so yes, you're right. Just very quickly, this is an ordinance that if approved by the board would waive 50% of the business license and liquor license fees for the year. This is in recognition of the impact that COVID-19 has had on Wheeling's businesses and to try to give them some assistance to weather the storm. You'll recall that last year, the village board waived these fees for the entire year. And so this is basically the same ordinance that you approved a year ago, thereabouts.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Questions? Trustee Vogel?
I had mentioned earlier, thought that possibility of not changing this as far as the 50%, but changing the due date. They're just starting to come out with partial, allowing partial use of their facilities at 25% at this point. It'll be up to 50, I think, soon. And if we can delay the payment for a couple months and let them get back on their feet, I think it'd be helpful to them. And we'll still get it within the same budget year, so we'd still have it.
If that's the desire of the board, we certainly can, and both Director Clicker and Kaplan can follow up if I misspeak. The problem with that on our end is it causes a fairly significant administrative burden. Whether that's important or not, I guess, is up to the board. But keeping track and managing the licenses will become a fairly onerous task to buy an extra couple of months. But certainly we can do whatever the board would like. Did I miss anything?
I'd like to shoot for at least September 1st.
September?
September 1st.
Trustee Papantos, September or?
I was happy with just reducing it by half. I suppose we could do September 1st if it helps the businesses.
Trustee Vito?
Just what's the administrative issue?
So sorry, I was caught off guard. There is an administrative issue. The other bigger issue is that we then have to play debt collector. So typically on May 1st, we simply don't give a license if someone doesn't pay. This year, of course, there wouldn't be a charge. But if we do issue a license and then come whatever date, say September 1st, whatever it is, we would then have to go after one of our businesses, and that's not something that we typically want to do. But again, we can do it. I don't want to frame this as we can't. I just want to make clear that we'll figure it out, but we're going to have to chase people then and bring them into hearings to take away their license should they then not pay on September 1st. I think that's the biggest downside.
Can we just issue a letter now saying we're going to bill you September 1st and you'll get your renewal at that point in time?
No, because then they won't have a business license between now and then. So we need to issue the license so that they are up to code and operating with a current business license. We could certainly issue a letter that says your bill will be due by September 1st.
What if we extend the date, the expiration date till September 1st?
It's a different ordinance. That would be a different ordinance, and what we're talking about is a change to the fees. If it was an actual change to the date of a business license, the cycle of that would be, it could be done, but it would be a different ordinance. What I would suggest is along the lines of what Manager Sondilas was saying is that if we want to make the payment date September 1st, that we could still, because just as many businesses that are struggling, and we appreciate that, and we can understand that there are also a large number of corporate entities that they're just used to sending out payments at certain periods of time. So if we delay in sending those out, we're all of a sudden going to start getting checks in without invoices because they're just used to sending us checks. I know it sounds crazy, but that will happen. So what I would suggest is that if the payment due date would be pushed back to September 1st, not necessarily our invoicing date for the business license.
Give them a net 90 or a net 120 or whatever that is.
You can do that.
Yeah. Issue the license and give them a net.
Just trying to make it as easy as possible. And not only them, but us, so.
So go ahead with the 50%, but give them 90 to pay?
90 to 120, 120 would be better, get us closer to the September date.
Are you restructuring your request?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
They'll delay, give them a net the 120.
Net 120, so then, Trustee Papantos, would that be?
That's fine.
Trustee Vito? That's fine. Trustee Lang?
Yes.
I don't see you there. Trustee Kruger?
Sure.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
I would agree with that. So half of it with a net 20 due. Clear? Okay, we need a motion then.
So is it a motion to approve as amended?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
moved.
Second.
Motion, Trustee Rufato, second, was it Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes.
13B, ordinance amending Title 7 Animals and Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code to establish regulations for the licensing, permit, and keeping of chickens within the village, docket number 2020-37.
Mr. Clicker.
You have before you an ordinance that will amend Title 7 and Title 19 of the Municipal Code to, if approved, would allow for the keeping of backyard chickens, which would be restricted to hens only. No roosters would be permitted. And as we discussed previously when we were bringing up this topic, when we did the initial research into this, we have modeled this off of another community that has already approved these regulations. We have modeled it off of Rolling Meadows. We use that community due to their similar lot sizes that they have compared to our community, the very similar lot sizes, and so we felt that their approach, if the board were to approve these regulations, their approach would be applicable in Wheeling as well. So what you have before you are zoning changes that would permit the chicken coop to be allowed to be as an accessory structure in a single-family residential district. Its setback would be 10 foot from any property line, 10 foot from any dwelling, from any residence, excuse me, and would be a maximum of 8 foot high and 100 square feet in size. Those would be the extent of the zoning regulations. But there are other than regulations that would be in Title 7, which is the animal care and control section of our municipal code. There would be sections, as I mentioned, that you would only be allowed to keep hens. You would have to have a minimum of 2, but no more than 6. Many people have asked me about why the minimum of 2, and the best explanation I can find is that chickens don't like to be lonely. I wish there was a better explanation than that. But it would also require that the resident who wished to keep hens in their yard would need to be licensed with the village, when part of that licensing would require that they would have to provide proof of a registration with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, which would mean that they are following all the state guidelines and regulations regarding the keeping and care for farm animals. So they would need to provide a certification that they have done that. They would need to get a building permit for their chicken coop, and then we would also need, that would be allowed then for them to be licensed with the village, which there would be a maximum of 25 in town. I don't anticipate us getting anywhere near that number of 25 based on the conversations I've had with other communities that have permitted backyard chickens, but 25 is a good, safe number. So with that, if there are questions regarding this, or if I've forgotten anything, please let me know. But if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Trustee Rufato, then Trustee Lang.
Thank you.
A
Couple of questions. The chickens, do they have to, is there any part of this ordinance that they have to stay in the coop, or could they roam a yard?
They must be maintained in the coop or run, which is part of.
Right, okay. And then I watched and I read the facts and findings. There was a concern about the odor,
Yes.
how is that?
It'd be no different than any other odor in the community. We have property maintenance codes and standards that are established for odors and smells and noise and light and everything in that, and so we would follow those same guidelines.
So somebody calls our code compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Who goes out and speaks to the person that's got the chickens?
That would be our property maintenance officers or our health officer.
Okay.
They would go out and, again, investigate. In this case, if it is an odor, see if there is a smell. If there is, it's pretty clear, and we would address that.
And so one of the, in Chapter 7, and I'm not sure if it's, in Chapter 7, Title 7, .06, it's around, I guess, well, there's a number of .06, but the very first thing is authority and cause. The police department is authorized to enforce the provisions of this title and may impound any animal found to be in violation thereof. Is that still going to be?
Considering that my department does not have any ability to round up any type of animal, whether it be a dog, cat, chicken, or whatever, yes, I would still believe that the police department would be involved with impounding chickens if necessary.
Okay.
And where would we take them?
Use Mandarin.
And
I mean, it was right there.
so,
Too easy.
chickens, like any other animals, can have some diseases, and they could spread diseases. And I'm sure that's true of dogs and, everything else, but it would seem to me that it would be hard to control that, if we get into that.
That is honestly the reason for the Illinois Department of Agricultural registration. One, not only do they have guidelines and rules that they must follow for the keeping of the animals with the state, but if, let's say, for instance, there is a bird flu outbreak and the state makes the decision that all chickens in town in the state must be euthanized, the state will notify them and tell them that they must take care of their chickens, and the state will follow up on the enforcement of that.
Okay. And lastly, the issue and watching Plan Commission meeting, there was some questions about R1, R2, and R3.
Correct.
And I don't know if they ever came to a resolution, but it looks like your ordinance allows them in all residential areas.
All single-family residential, yes. That's what was presented to the Plan Commission. They did vote. They did say R1 and R2 they did not have any issues with. They were very split on R3, and the vote was 4-3 in favor of allowing the chickens in the R3 districts.
Okay. And again, my only concern here is this is not the approach that I would have taken. I would have taken square footage of a lot instead of setbacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rufato. Trustee Lang.
So, Mr. Clicker, and I brought this up before, and just for clarification on it again. So it starts out as a lot of fun for the family, but we had a pretty nasty winter this past winter, and hopefully it's over. But I just, I can't do this anymore. Kids, we're getting rid of the chicken coop.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about, is that now a state problem? Really to remove the chickens to?
The only regulation or stipulation that we have in there and that we would enforce is we are not going to allow you to slaughter them on site.
Right.
If you sell them to somebody who wants to use them for some other purpose in a facility that is licensed to do that, we don't have any issue with that. If you want to sell them to someone else who would like to keep them as chickens, if it's outside of Wheeling, we have zero concern about that. If it's in Wheeling, we would make sure that that property is licensed properly. But
I think we may need to provide some sort of guidance to folks. Some folks know what they're doing and they're going to thrive at it and have a great time doing this, but others are not going to be that lucky and probably find that it's more that they took on.
I don't disagree with you at all, and not that I'm trying to downplay or diminish anything of your concerns on this, but I'm sure that there are, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure there are chicken keeper groups out there that, just as there are probably apiary groups out there of people who all want to keep beehives together, and they probably will amongst themselves be able to advise people as to, I don't want chickens anymore, who can take them or who can I sell them to? I can't answer that for certain, but that would be my guess.
Well, keep in mind then, I guess we're going to have to sort of guide people when these situations come up, because where else do you turn if you don't know about those help groups and so on? So, okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Trustee Lang. Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. I really haven't changed my stance, and I apologize for the amount of work, and I realize you did a lot of work. Some of my concerns are, we know people don't always follow code. My neighbor's got chickens, that's great. And, skip the license, skip the permit, and start building your chicken coop. How are we going to know?
Well, one, I would be willing to bet that you are going to let us know that your neighbor is building a chicken.
I'm one of the lucky ones. I live in a townhouse.
Yes, but I'm in general, we have had a few instances of chickens in town. It's no secret why we're here. That's why we're here. So I would be willing to bet that if somebody put in a chicken coop without getting licensed about it, we will know about it eventually. And we will then proceed through our property maintenance and enforcement practices as we would any property maintenance and violation in the community.
Thank you. And then we talked about odor. So, one resident calls and says, these chickens just smell. What do? We go out and we talk to them. Okay, how does somebody get rid of the smell? I'm assuming you can't just tell the chickens to take an extra shower. It's going to happen.
Quite honestly, it's probably, I don't know this again, I haven't dealt with it enough to actually know about it, but I would assume it would be very similar to compost piles. If you properly take care of a compost pile, there is no smell, no odor, no one will ever notice that it's there. It's only when the user doesn't do things properly that the odors will become an issue. If that's the case, we have enforcement measures in place to handle that.
Is one of it get rid of the chickens?
At least get rid of the odor.
Okay, I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is if they smell, how do we direct them to make them not smell anymore? And I just want to emphasize that this ordinance is firm. There is no selling of eggs. There's no...
It's for personal consumption only.
We're not going to have roadside egg stands like little lemonade stands going on.
The ordinance specifically says any harvesting of eggs is for personal consumption only.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Any other questions? Trustee Rufato had a follow-up?
Just one other comment, and I may have missed it. Have we put a limit on the number of licenses?
25.
25, okay. I wasn't sure I read that through. Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Trustee Lang, motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Trustee Vogel. Clerk Simpson, roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
No.
Trustee Papantos?
No.
Trustee Krueger?
No.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And President Horker?
Yes.
4-3.
There we go. Life's a 4-3 vote. They're legal. Now you just got to get licensed and built.
Keep chickens safe, legal, and rare. That's how you got to do it.
You going to train your guys, Chief?
5 years in.
I'd like to see that camera video of catching them.
We'll have our fastest person on it.
I consider it an evening of success when I get to write a new song from an agenda item, so soon you'll hear Chickens Are Lonely coming from my musical stylings.
Never had to worry about them being lonely. There was always like a couple dozen. Congratulations, ladies.
And you really thought you missed us?
Item C, Clerk Simpson.
13C.
Yes, please.
Resolution approving the use of Cook County 7C and Class C tax incentive program in addition to this currently approved Class 6B, 7A, and 7B programs, and further approve a revised consolidated village application for participation in any of the village-approved Cook County tax incentive programs.
Director Ainsworth, does any other town have as many of these things as we do now?
There's more, actually. There's Class 8s, Class 9s, but those are geographically specific. So we're going to be probably about in the middle.
Okay. So what do we got? Explain this.
All right. Thank you, President Horkert. So as Economic Development Department, we're continuously looking at our economic development toolbox. I had noticed that there was a couple of class property tax abatements that are on the books at Cook County that we do not have on the books here. You already may have known about the Class 6B. We've had this since 1980s. My predecessor in 2019 had adopted the 7A, 7B program for some chronically vacant properties. But there are two more that I wanted to bring your attention to tonight, which is the Class 7C and the Class C, which, so if you look at your screen, on the left, these are the programs we've adopted already. And on the right, these are the ones that I would propose via the resolution that is before you tonight. So just a quick overview of these three classifications. The Class C is an industrial property tax abatement to help reactivate vacant buildings or with help new construction. Class C is commercial. It's the 7, excuse me, the Class 7 program is for the commercial properties. So again, we have on the books the Class 7A and the Class 7B were 12-year tax breaks for commercial properties. The Class 7C is a smaller one. I kind of call it the little brother or the little sister to the 7A, 7B, so it's a 5-year tax abatement. This is for chronically vacant buildings that may not need investment into it, and they have to be vacant for at least 12 months. And then the Class C is is for commercial and industrial properties that go through environmental remediation. So what is that? If there's environmental contamination or there was a brownfield or a gas station that had a LUST, which is a leaking underground storage tank, costs a lot of money to remediate that. These property owners have to get a no further remediation letter from the Illinois IEPA, record that, and then they are eligible for this Class C. And the time ticks. As soon as they get that that no further remediation, they must actually have applied for this, get their entitlements, and have this filed with Cook County within 1 year of that no further the remediation letter. So these are the Class 6, 7, and C. I'm happy to take any questions about these because these may be relatively new to the Wheeling Board. No? The next thing I wanted to do actually was consolidate all 5 programs into one application. So
I liked that. I thought that was a great idea.
Thank you. So when Cook County updates their ordinance, most times the towns have to follow, whether that be an update to the resolution style or some sort of additional document. If that has to reflect in our application, I would only have to come back and update one application versus 5. Right now, we have 3 on the books, and it just gets discombobulated. So I also took this opportunity to add a couple more programs, well, actually policies that are here before you tonight. One of my big core beliefs in the 6B program is to help modernize and boost our industrial building stock. We don't want to just give away a 6B for the heck of it. Our goal is to help them modernize, make it more efficient, suit the building to their needs. And the rule of thumb that I had put together would be a $5 per square foot minimum, and that would be reflected in the building permit. They would have to accomplish that within 2 years of the actual, if they got the 6B resolution from the village. And economic development staff would work with community development staff to make sure that that number they promised you at the village board level transfers into their building permit applications. Because we also have some really small industrial buildings, we want to at least put a minimum, so that would be a $40,000 improvement. And what are those improvements? A new roof, HVAC, efficient lighting, a new parking lot, anything that revolves in a building permit. Again, the logic here is to help enhance our building stock in the commercial and the industrial level. The other thing that I'm continuing that the 7A and the 7B program, which you have seen, which there has to be a sales tax generating component if we're going to accommodate for a 7C. So that would be a hotel, motel, a restaurant, retailer. Those would be clearly defined, and also in this application, I had requested that economic development staff meet with these applicants early on. We want to vet them as much as they vet the Village of Wheeling. So we want to make sure they're a good quality company and they're a good quality applicant when they come see you guys. Finally, there's a new program that I had helped when I was with my prior community called CERM. This is a relatively new Class 6B. This is for, it is a really high threshold. 250 full-time employees either have to be retained or attracted to qualify for this new 6B subcategory. What's the difference, though? Instead of it being vacant for 1 year or 2 years, they now only have to have a space vacant for 3 months. This is game-changing. When we have large industrial properties, we don't want to see vacant for 2 years. This can be an opportunity to bring in a new company that has 250 full-time employees, get them activated in Wheeling, activate a property, and bring one of those large businesses here. So that's my last slide. I think it goes back to the logo after that. So I'm happy to take any more questions that anyone may have.
Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. Director Ainsworth, can you go back a slide? Sorry.
Actually, I don't know if I can. Previous? There we go.
There we go. Can you tell me an example of a 7C? Just
Sure.
because in my mind, I can't think of one
So
in
let's
town.
just take example, if the Burger King down the street here went vacant and it, it's a great site, it's at a light, it's got a drive-through, but it's chronically vacant for 14, 15 months, and I have another fast casual restaurant that wants to go in there. If I cannot justify them, they only want to put $20,000 into the building, I don't know if I can justify a 12-year property tax abatement for them, and they would be satisfied with a 5-year Class 7C property tax abatement. A, we're reactivating a tax-generating business. B, if they still put that $20,000 or $40,000 into it, that's certainly something that helps them with this application. So in some instances, there just may not be enough oomph or enough reason to give them a 12-year property tax break. So this is kind of like that common ground incentive.
But they do have to do some rehab. It's not just I'm moving into an empty building.
Well, actually, for this one, they don't. For that $5 classification that we had talked about for industrial buildings for the 6B, but staff would still encourage them to update the facade or work with community development on anything that might be, to help of anything of a life safety or a community development related request. But sincerely, though, we still will apply that logic to help them upgrade and modernize that building.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Trustee Kruger?
Thank you, Mr. President. Director Ainsworth, first question, and forgive me for not knowing this off the top of my head, but is there a fee that any applicant needs to pay when they file?
Yes, the standard fee is $500 with Cook County and then $950 with us. We are not requesting to change that. That has been a longstanding application fee for us.
So no matter what 6, 7, A, B, C, or C, it's going to be $950 on top of what they paid to the county?
Right, and that is to help pay for our public hearing notice, our legal notice, the letters that we send out to the school districts. So this is an additional staff time request that we help request to offset that.
All right, and then in the same vein as Trustee Papantos, I was trying to think of an example for Class C in town. I imagine because it seems to be more commercial and industrial properties, I was thinking like the old Garden Fresh site over at Old Buffalo Grove Road in Hints. There's a gas station there. I'm wondering if that owner sold the entire property, including the gas station, would this Class C be something that might be eligible for the new developer because remediation would have to be done for that gas station?
So the Class C a Class 7B would probably be more applicable. A Class C may be for a contaminated industrial property that has gone through remediation. Yes, a gas station could qualify. I believe it's on its own lot. If that gas station was just getting rehabbed or renovated or redeveloped, a Class C or Class 7B or Class 7A could qualify. The applicant has to come to us and say, the site has been remediated, we have the NFR letter, we know we have so much time, and therefore we're going to request the Class C for that manner.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kruger. Any other questions or comments?
Well, just one
Trustee Lang?
comment is that they, this certainly will help with new businesses coming in, it's not going to do much with the existing businesses. I read a article in the Tribune a few weeks ago. I think I sent it to a few of the board members, but Cook County is going over, now they're doing the south suburbs where they did the north suburbs with the tax realignment and put more of the burden on businesses as opposed to residential.
Yeah, I hear you, and this assessment is done based on fair market value. So if these businesses already are assessed, sometimes businesses grow, sometimes they have to get right-sized, and our business development coordinator and I, we work hand in hand to make sure if they are looking for a smaller space, a larger space, we can help them relocate within Wheeling, and they may qualify for these, and therefore we have more tools at our disposal to help them stay in business and stay in town.
But we certainly have two very large vacancies on the north end of Milwaukee, which this would be perfect for.
Yeah, possibly, most likely the 7A would qualify for both of those because, as you can see, they would have to invest up to $2 million. If I have a 2,000 square foot space that they're not going to put more than $100,000 in the building, I think the Class 7C would be appropriate for that scenario. And that's to your point. We have now more classifications for more scenarios because some buildings may not have met that but-for test or that minimum threshold to get a 12-year tax break.
And whereas we have some other vacancies like the old Sam's Club and Kmart property and so on, a lot of those, just as a reminder, are not in our control as to, for Sam's Club, for instance, Walmart has a big say over who goes there, and therefore we'd love to fill it with whomever comes along, but Walmart has a say who can be there and who can't be there.
Right, they have private restrictions and a private board on the private side that helps vet who would go in there, but the brokerage team in the village work hand in hand to try and bring in new users to that space.
And the Kmart property is private property that is whatever the market price is of that property that may or may not be keeping new businesses from coming into that particular piece, regardless of what kind of tax incentives we have to offer. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Lang. Trustee Vito.
So these additions that you've made in the application process, those are just in the application process. They're not going to be in the ordinance, correct? Like the $5 per square foot?
Correct. So the resolution you're seeing tonight approves the application, and the application has policies inside. If staff were to suggest any more changes, they'd come back to you with that new application, but we've thoroughly vetted this and updated. Actually, we've kept a lot of the existing application the same. We just added some additional policies. But we have no intent of modifying this unless we come to you for approval.
So what's the plan if someone says, yeah, okay, I have a 100,000 square foot place, I'm going to do $500,000 in improvements, and then they don't? They have the application, they
Yes,
get approved.
They have 2 years to finish it, and if they don't, we'll work with them, and if it's been a year and they still have, actually at Cook County, they have to start construction within 1 year of approval there as well. So if they're at 18 months and we have seen no activity, by all means, we'll be working with them hand in hand to get going. Even in the resolution, I believe, and the application, we say that we will review and rescind if they do not live up to what they've promised the board in the village.
What's the county's base requirement for improvement? Is there a dollar amount?
For some instances, no. But given the context of Wheeling, the majority of our industrial facilities have been built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, so they're becoming obsolete. We actually are, a lot of our industrial base is Class B and C, sometimes D. The lower you go, the less features, the less amenities there are, and the less businesses that we can attract. So really, our goal is with the 6B is to help modernize those, help give new life to them. If somehow a business folds or they get bought out and we don't have control over that, they at least have upgraded that facility to make it more turnkey for the next occupant.
Yeah, I mean, my hesitancy is that these are supposed to spark vacant properties to become occupied properties. And if we start putting minimum thresholds in, someone who's looking for a steal and needs the tax abatement to get, especially now, to get something generated, this may preclude them from doing it because they can't reach that threshold of improvement. But maybe they can put some curtains in the windows and get bodies in the doors and have products being built. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a little hesitant to go with any additional requirements or additional thresholds than what's required by the county to get the abatement.
So keep this in mind too. A new parking lot, new electrical, new lighting. Actually, ComEd offers an energy efficiency upgrade that they can get a grant, but that price will reflect the contract price, which comes in here. So they may meet our threshold and actually get a grant from ComEd to reduce their electricity bill, increase their lighting, increase their efficiency. So they are doing dual purpose. And in most times, if a property, an end user is buying a building, there are some instances when they'll get a credit for the roof, the bad HVAC, the bad lighting from the seller, and they can apply that towards that.
Yeah, I get it. It's possible, but it's not certain.
In most instances, a lot of almost every single instance you've seen 6B-wise, they've always promised a dollar amount. And we just want to make sure that they hold to that dollar amount, because they may promise you $1 million, but they only put in $400,000, $500,000. We want to make sure we bring you quality applicants, quality tenants who are going to add jobs and revitalize our building stock. Because when you walk through some of these spaces, you'll be quite surprised how derelict they may be in some instances.
If I can add, these thresholds are not real difficult to meet, and I think what they will help you do, Trustee Vito, is weed out the real players, property owners and businesses that are going to come to town and do something with property that's been vacant. These are valuable incentives. It's the golden ticket, really, when it comes to rehabbing a building that's been vacant. So I think these thresholds are eminently reasonable, and they just don't put a big restriction on a business that's ready to come to town to do something with a property. It's a great question, but it's a policy call for you guys to make. Just my thoughts. These aren't thresholds that are difficult to meet.
Yeah, and it's not your money, but I mean, it's, I understand that. It's just I don't see the need to put in additional barriers, but that's my position.
Yeah, that's again policy call for sure. But every time we get a 6B that comes before you, we ask questions about what are you going to do to the building? What are you going to bring us? How many employees? What's your rehabilitation going to be? And every presentation we've had has some level of rehabilitation. So I don't think it's going to change much in terms of what we've done. It really just ferrets out, I think.
And if I may add, I had the aha moment. If you look at the first paragraph of the memo, we talked about how 6 million square feet have either been constructed or renovated, and $226 million have been invested since 1988. If you do the math, it's just barely above $5.25 a square foot. So we were in line with this request. So we are essentially in line with all the other applicants you've ever seen before you.
Yeah, I understand that, but I don't see the need to throw. If it's going to happen, why do we have to mandate it? If you guys are right and this happens all the time, why mandate it? There's no need. It's superfluous at that point. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and we shouldn't have the mandate, because there could be a situation where someone comes in and says, I want this vacant building. I can't do it without the tax break, and you know what? I'm going to put some paint on it, make it look nicer for $1 a square foot, and that's all I'm going to do. But I'm going to have 16 guys back there doing something that they weren't doing before, in a vacant property. I don't see the reason for it.
Well, the intent is kind of to offset that cost, right?
Right. The savings over the 12 years will certainly probably give them back more than the $5 per square foot that they have put in. I mean, this is, for the first 10 years, it's a 60% tax reduction. And again, what we hope to get out of this is a building that has better features, that's more efficient, and again, the efficiency itself will save them even more money with a lower tax bill, lower heating bill, maybe even lower water bill.
Not to belabor the debate, but I think one point that hasn't been made is that when someone gets a reduction in any of these class 6 or 7 incentives, they are putting a burden on the rest of the community because their taxes are lower than what they otherwise would have been. So the other side of that, the effect of that then to the community is that we would like to see an investment in the asset that remains in the community once, say, the 5 years, the 12 years expires, that there is a building that was worth the abatement. Does that make sense? So even though, say in your example, there's 16 people doing something that they weren't before, if they leave, the community lost that tax revenue and just has an even older building in even worse condition than it was when said company first came. And again, I'm not trying to debate, I'm just trying to add another angle to the explanation for why a community is looking for some reinvestment into the asset. That's all.
Yeah, I understand that's ideal, but that's not always going to happen, especially now when we're coming out of some really tough times. So I just don't see the point of having it mandated in there, because there may be situations where it might not be necessary, and it might still be a betterment for the community. I don't know. Yes, we've belabored it, I suppose.
Excuse me, do other communities who have these programs, because most communities do have at least.
It kind of varies widely. From the last community I came from was actually $10 per square foot, and in some other instances, if you were to get a new 6B, they would like to see a minimum level of threshold. We actually got a report from Elk Grove Village because they had done a community-wide thing, and it ranged from having just the minimum dollar amount to, again, $10 per square foot.
Can we make it non-mandatory, but in other words, do we have the ability to waive the minimum square foot?
If I could speak to that, if the board would like us to go back to the drawing board and come up with criteria for that, we will. It's just not something we're going to be able to do tonight, because you don't want to get into a situation where you're waiving the criteria just because you feel like it. That's going to lead to allegations of unfair treatment. So we can create a waiver provision that has criteria to look at and bring that back to you. I would suggest perhaps you approve this tonight with the idea that we'll go back to amend the application and bring it back another resolution with waiver criteria. This way Patrick can get moving on attracting potential incentive applicants at this point.
Thank you.
Trustee Vito?
Good.
Okay. Comments to my right? Trustee Rufato?
The more I hear this, Trustee Vito makes very salient points here that are we discouraging business owners from coming in here in doing this? So I would like to see what Mr. Ferrillo discussed in moving forward on this.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was it. I'm okay with passing this, but I think we need something more around it as far as the dollar per square footage, because, and maybe we adjust it in the future. Maybe we don't have one now, and maybe 2 years from now we change it because we need the tax dollars here, and anything to help bring businesses in, industrial. This is what it's going to impact, and maybe some retail would be a help. Bottom line is I agree with Trustee Vito.
Thank you, Trustee Rufato. Trustee Lang, and then I think Trustee Kruger, did you want to say something?
So, Patrick, you said that a lot of these classes, you have done some of these before in previous employment. Mm-hmm. Did you see negative effects like that? I know it's not the time of COVID back then, but was there negative effects to having certain square footage?
No, literally every single application I've ever entertained where an existing building was there and someone was moving in, they automatically thought they had to renovate the office, redo the warehousing to meet their needs, add a new drive-in door, upgrade the electrical. It adds up quickly. and this spans 2 other communities. I've not ever seen a Class 6B in my experience that has not ever come with a dollar amount attached to it. Sorry for the double negative. And in our history, in Wheeling, there's always been a improvement level in the resolution that you've seen before and approved before.
I understand what Trustee Vito's saying, and actually the way that Village Manager Spondoulis then explained it as well, it seems to make more sense. So I'm ready to go with this tonight, and if we're...
Patrick, the county language, the regulations of the county under 6B, for example, calls for substantial rehabilitation, aren't those words used?
That's one classification. There is also abandonment, where someone can just reoccupy a building that's been vacant for 2 years. That's a very long time threshold to meet. So in some instances, you could reoccupy a vacant building, but a landlord will throw TI dollars or tenant improvement allowance dollars to help attract someone so they don't have to hold an asset for 2 years. So to answer your question, yes, they do have the language in there and a criterion there for substantial rehab.
Which is very vague wording, and which is why communities try to define it when it gets to the local level. What does it mean to be substantial rehabilitation? What do those words mean? We have a definition in this application. Des Plaines had a different definition, which was even more. You know, this is a tool for you to help put a net around what you want to see in some of these buildings that need the work and need to be reoccupied. So it's completely a policy call, but that's the basis behind it. It's pretty vague as worded at the county level. This helps you understand what you want it to be.
I can appreciate that.
I like it vague. Vague gives us leeway. I mean, to be honest, Jim, to counter that. I mean, this mandates that, you know, if someone comes in and they only want to do $3 a square foot on a $100,000 place, it might be awesome. And, you know, $300,000 investment to give in the building, I don't know, could be all it needs. I just don't like the requirement.
Trustee Kruger.
Thank you. I just want a point of clarification. 6B, 7A, and 7B have already been on our books, right?
Correct.
And we did not have this minimum investment.
Correct.
Written in. So now this minimum is going to cover all of our now 5.
No, it's just the Class 6B, our industrial stock. Cook County actually already has dollar amounts for the Class 7. The Class 7A and the Class 7B, you can actually see on the slide, it's a Class 7A is designated when a property is invested with up to $2 million exclusive of land.
Got it.
Class 7B is $2 million plus.
So we are only now classifying the minimum investment on 6B.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we have not had it before, the minimum investment? And,
Right.
And we,
Right.
Yeah, but again, if you look at
we didn't have it written in before.
Yeah, then
Why are we putting it in now?
I see no reason to have it now. I mean, if you're saying the majority of people spend that amount of money anyway, in past history without us having that requirement, then why put it in?
Does it apply to 7C too?
No.
Or is there any minimum to 7C?
No, but again, that would be if a Burger King or some 1,000 square foot commercial space wanted a 7A, and I, in good faith, did not want to bring a 12-year property tax break to the village board, the 7C would be more appropriate. So again, that $5 per square foot for the industrial is just for the 6B category.
How difficult would it be to look at all of the 6Bs we've given in the past? And they're for what, 20 years?
33 years.
33 years? What happens after the 33 years are up? What happens to these businesses? Do they stay? Are they still here? Do they go look at some other location to get another 6B someplace else? Or what happens to them? Is it difficult to do that?
To clarify, we've had the 6B ordinance or resolution on the books for 33 years. The tax break is for 12 years, and we don't have a renewal policy, and that remains the same.
It's 12 years at 60%.
10 years at 60%, and then it creeps back up to the full market value at the end of the 12 years.
At the end of the 12, yeah. Can we see how many of those? I mean, do we get people that use it, and once the 12 years are up, leave us and go someplace else for another, you know?
I think the general answer is that they do not leave. I mean, there's an extreme cost associated with relocating a business. I think the general answer would be that they do not relocate.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that their investment is so large, they're not going to do that. Okay, up front. So do we need a minimum? If it would cost them so much to move again and the investment would be so high, they're spending that money anyway. So they're not jumping to get another.
It's a policy decision.
Yeah.
What if we, but it is within the scope of our authority to approve this contingent on language to follow that would review the minimum? That's a question, actually. Is it within the scope of our authority to specifically approve this with the specific direction that we need this minimum reviewed?
I think that's certainly direction we can take, but your approval of this as is will be as is.
Right.
Right? And we may have applications that come in and are considered prior to the time, and we'll work quickly to do this, but you can approve this with direction for us to bring it back additional language or table it. Table it and have us bring it back in 2 weeks with maybe that seems to me to be the better way to go.
I might be getting ahead of myself. I would like to poll the board. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'd just like to poll the board.
For that.
It was good dialogue, but I'd like to poll the board. Who wants to see the minimum addressed? Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
As is.
As is. Trustee Vito is a yes.
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
I don't matter, but I was going to just approve it the way it was.
Is a better question to ask, should we just remove the minimum? I mean, can we,
Is it within this, trustee, you want to be a trustee? No.
No.
Mr. Ferrolo, is it within the scope of our authority to remove the minimum?
Sure, we can motion to approve the resolution contingent upon the removal of the minimum language. And Patrick, you can identify.
Yeah, it's in the application itself. I think it's on page 8.
Related to Class 6B.
Yeah. It is on page 3 at the top. It's
the first bullet point?
It's the fourth bullet point on page 3. Yes, first bullet point on page 3, excuse me.
So it would be a motion to approve the resolution contingent upon removal of the threshold language at the top of page 3 contained in the application. And then we would prepare a new application after we get a vote to approve.
So, given the way the poll went, I would be looking for that motion from this board. Approval of the code, of the resolution as presented with the elimination of the $5 per square foot minimum in the application fee. Is that appropriate, Mr. Ferrolo?
Yes.
So that's the motion I'm looking for, given the way the poll went.
So moved.
Trustee Rufato makes the motion. Second.
Second.
Trustee Papantos. I was waiting for you, Trustee Vito.
Second, third.
Yeah, who was first?
Trustee Rufato was first. Now you
started this mess.
2A, 2B.
Yeah, just sitting there.
Sorry. All right, Trustee
Okay.
Vito.
Go for it.
Roll call. Go for it.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes.
We will amend the application and move forward.
Didn't seem that complicated. D.
13D, discussion strategic plan update.
Mr. Spondilis.
Thank you very much. I am very proud this evening to present for discussion the draft strategic plan. It is the result of effort that began approximately a year ago, was derailed a bit by last year's pandemic, and came to conclusion then in this form very recently. I will be presenting a bulk of the content of the plan, but with us this evening is Peter Burchard, who began this process with the village board in 2015 and was our consultant in putting together what ultimately was passed 6 years ago at this point. I will also be asking Assistant Village Manager Crotty, who worked tirelessly on this document as well, to help me should there be any questions or any points he would like to make as we get into the meat of the document. So by way of introduction, I want to just quickly go over a little high level what is a strategic plan before moving into some material from Mr. Burchard, and then we will take a look specifically at the draft document before you. So strategic planning is a process of looking into the future and identifying trends, issues, and goals against which organizational priorities can be aligned. Within a unit of government, it means aligning the expressed needs of the community, the elected officials, and the professional staff with consideration for budget constraints to a higher level strategy. The purpose is to determine direction for an organization. It focuses efforts and ensures that everyone in the process is working towards a common goal. A strategic plan accomplishes 4 main objectives. 1, it provides clarity, direction, and focus by addressing the question, what is our purpose, which is the mission statement? What do we want to achieve, which is the vision statement? And how are we going to get there, which is the plan itself? These answers allow organizations to be proactive rather than reactive. Second, a strategic plan drives organizational alignment and creates a sense of direction by helping to define the direction in which an organization must travel and establish realistic objectives and goals. Third, it increases operational efficiency by providing stakeholders a roadmap to align specific action to specific goals. And fourth, a plan communicates a message. In addition to the accountability provided by a strategic plan, the document serves as a communications vehicle for what must be done to create short and long-term sustainability. In 2015, as I mentioned, the board approved this document, which has been publicized and we have discussed many times, obviously at its origination, and then again multiple times throughout the years to discuss and present some of our successes addressing the goals that are contained therein. This process built upon the success of that document. And most importantly, that document created a foundation of the core themes that drive tonight's update and future plans. It is from this groundwork that a new strategic plan was built. So at this time, I would, if you would, Peter, just come up and talk to the board and the public a little bit about the purpose and process of the document. I will follow that up then by digging into the meat of the document itself.
Could we have the lights up?
Sure.
While that occurs? Well, good evening. It's great to see all of you. It's great to be out, isn't it? I enjoyed speaking with each of you about your strategic plan, and it's great to be here. I have to make a note, though, John. For me, in a certain way, this is personal. My family, as I told many of you, I grew up in Des Plaines. And I recall the many, many times my grandparents and parents talked about adventuring up to Wheeling. This is where they socialized. This is where they ate. This is where they would occasionally bring us kids. And then they would go home and tell us about what a great time that they had in Wheeling. And Wheeling was sort of that mystery place that we wanted to go to. And I have to admit and confess from time to time, Mr. Mayor, that I snuck up here and played in a quarry. I don't know, I swam in some quarry near here. I don't know exactly where it was or if I was trespassing on somebody's property, so I want to make a public apology for that if I was doing that. And my dad, along with his playing partner, a guy named Ray Kroc, golfed together frequently at Chevy Chase, and they played cards there. I heard they may have had a drink or two before they sometimes would retire to the Elks Club in Des Plaines. So for me, this is, it's very meaningful because in a sense, Wheeling was my family's second home. So when I stand before you, I stand with great pride and appreciation of being part of your great community. So here we are. As a consultant, I tend to repeat things that the village manager already says, but in doing so, I want to let you know, though, I'll be very brief about that. Anything that I repeat, I will be quick about. The Village of Wheeling strategic plan is for the elected officials, not for staff, to oversee and decide on the village's most important opportunities and priorities. The idea of the plan is to convert your challenges into strategies, and these strategies will create the future you want for Wheeling. That said, I wish to make 3 quick points. First, as John noted, this is an update to the plan the village board adopted some 5 years ago, a plan that includes many timeless themes. We didn't change the themes. Is that right, John? We didn't. Correct. We didn't change those. Second, we didn't change them because you didn't want them changed, okay, quite frankly. Second, in terms of the overall process, this update is based on the input from each of you. And again, I enjoyed those conversations. I also spoke to the village's management team, and thanks to all the participants, your community-based themes include many fresh ideas. Third, there's something very different and special, and dare I say, exciting about this update. I get excited about strategic planning, whereas a lot of people tend to just go, oh, isn't that interesting, and they put it on the shelf. I get excited about this because when it's done right, it can really determine, it can guide how you want the future of your community to be. In speaking with you, it became abundantly clear that you are of like mind on several key matters. My hope is that when I translated that I got it right, that we're on point about what your thinking is. These matters, when addressed, will make a significant difference in the future of Wheeling. This is you shaping Wheeling's future. Because of the special nature of your key priorities, the key priorities you raised, we wanted to give them a clear title, a title that helps everyone see the importance of these matters. We called your top priorities the Village of Wheeling's high-stakes strategies. There are 3 of them. I also want to call your attention to how the high-stakes strategies are structured. You have the document from John. First, based on your comments, we attempted to clearly define each high-stakes strategy. We tried to pull out any vagueness, any doubt, any what does this mean, because it's essential that these strategies, when they're stated, that they're clear to everybody. We wanted to capture the key nugget behind each matter. Next, each definition includes an initial call to action. These steps outline how to execute on each strategy, which brings me to the important issue of village board policy. Each high-stakes strategy includes a set of policy matters that require your future consideration and oversight, really sort of your ongoing oversight. Perhaps there are other policies you want to include. The key point is this: if the high-stakes strategy are correct, and if they have a chance of succeeding, you, as board members, must oversee the policies that bring them to life. In other words, this cannot be a document that you approve and then say to John, good luck, keep us posted. We hope it all works out. It has to be something that you take seriously, that you live with as well as staff and the community. So I wish to add a couple words of caution and then wrap up my comments. As an advisor, I sometimes risk offering advice, so here goes. As you consider and approve your high-stakes strategies and the rest of the document, don't get distracted by why you or others think this or that may not work. The bar is set very high. That is the most courageous part of stating your vision, I believe, for a board, any elected board especially, or adopting high-stakes strategies is in fact taking a stance and committing yourselves to it, regardless of the perceived or real obstacles that lie ahead. Obstacles and resistances are normal. Work through them. Let obstacles help shape your and staff's actions. Finally, to turn these strategies into successes, many decisions need to be made. I encourage you, your manager, the directors, and other employees to participate in decision-making and execution. An ideal question for everyone is this: what decisions can you make that will support this strategy? Thanks to you for the honor of working with you, to John Spondilis, to Mike Crotty, who was a big help throughout this entire process, your directors, and everyone else. I'm turning this back over to John, and I believe after John is finished, we will hear your comments and address any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Burchard was right. I jumped the gun a bit on the turning off of the lights. I was so excited by the PowerPoint presentation that I certainly could have left the lights on for my introduction. Thank you, Peter. So a little bit of how we're going to approach this. The PowerPoint presentation this evening are highlights of what is in the draft document, focusing mostly on the high-stakes strategies that you just heard Peter describe. Because the update is now split into two sections, the high-stakes strategies and then a refreshing of the goals that were listed under the key themes. As you heard, we kept the key themes the same from the existing document because they are important, they are foundational, and they came up in the conversations that you had with Peter. But that wasn't enough to just say, great, those remain the same. We went through each of the 6 themes and updated the specific goals that support those 6 themes, because that's where we saw the success in the previous document. If you recall, we had large posters made and we put check marks next to things. Those were goals that were associated with the 6 themes. So we wanted this not to be a complete redo of our strategic plan because we have a successful foundation established, but we wanted to build off of what we had, which is why we now have these 2 sections. So that's kind of the way the document is divided. This evening really is just a discussion of those things so that we can hear your final input. We will take that input, recreate it then into a final document, and bring it back to you in 2 weeks for final approval. So tonight, there's no approval involved here. We just want, as Peter said, this is your document. We want to make sure that we appropriately have put on paper the priorities that you see in our community. So, now, dramatic lighting. I typically don't like when people simply read from a PowerPoint presentation, but words matter here, as you heard Mr. Burchard describe the opportunity and the underlying issue that was assigned with each of the high-stakes strategies. Every word in there matters because we were trying to capture something. So as we take a look at each of the, and I have a mouse, I'm sorry, I don't have a space bar to do this. There we go. We want to make sure, again, that we've captured the essence of the issue. So there are 3. They are Restaurant Row, Dundee Road Corridor, and financial strength. So we'll go through all 3 of those in some detail. High-stakes strategy number 1, Restaurant Row. What is it? It is an opportunity to bridge historic connection to future growth. We are all very aware that the Village of Wheeling has a reputation for Restaurant Row. It's a reputation that began in the 70s, but what was Restaurant Row in the 70s cannot be what Restaurant Row is in 2021. Dining has changed as an industry. It isn't what it was back then because it can't be what it was back then. But we have an opportunity to capture that historic value of what Wheeling is known for, and we want to protect it. That's the point of why this is one of the high-stakes strategies, and I believe what the board was getting at when you all mentioned this in your interviews with Peter. The underlying issue is maintaining Restaurant Row as a source of community pride in a changing marketplace. Wheeling has had the reputation of a world-class restaurant row along Milwaukee Avenue, anchored by destination restaurants, which has been a main source of pride. The evolution of Restaurant Row to what it is today provides an opportunity to focus on the corridor from Hints to Lake Cook Road in order to support existing and attract new restaurants that will continue to contribute to Wheeling's positive reputation. It is a priority for Wheeling to ensure that Restaurant Row remains a source of pride.
Can we ask questions now, or should we wait? I'm good waiting.
I'm going to take a head count. I mean, Trustee Lang has already bid, so you can be after Trustee Lang. Okay.
I'd rather wait till the end.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
Would you like to do them at the end of each of the high-stakes strategies so that we don't lose momentum on any of the particular topics? Like I'll present Restaurant Row and then we talk about it? Does that work?
Okay, yeah, that works.
Okay.
You seemed very excited about this, and I just didn't want to interrupt you.
I think Mr. Burchard has rubbed off on me.
So at the end of each stake.
Excellent. This is the exciting stuff. This is
the future.
Quote unquote doing government. This is good. So as you heard, there are sections. It's great to have a philosophy. It's great to identify an opportunity. But there are concrete things that need to happen in order to support one of the strategies. So here we have, there are two sections to each of these, which would be village board policy and then initiatives. The second column are the initiatives, and this was an attempt, again, to collate the comments made by the board and put them into an action plan to support each of the strategies. So here, divided then by policy and initiatives. So here we have under Village Board policy to create and implement financial assistance specifically targeting the recruitment of restaurants to the corridor. I will be honest and say that some of this, as you heard, this has been a work in progress for about a year. We're doing some of these things. You've seen, like that one, you 2 months ago, a month ago, approved a policy specific for restaurants as presented by Director Ainsworth. To pass ordinances and adopt initiatives aimed at recruiting restaurants, for example, a redefined facade grant, an expansion of the Cook County Class 7 program, which was not intentionally timed to happen immediately preceding this presentation. And to make decisions that reinforce compliance with the current zoning and master planning profiles, identifying this area as a restaurant focus. That basically means protect what is Restaurant Row and not allow it then to meander into other development types. For initiatives, develop and implement measures to create and support a sense of place associated with Restaurant Row. Evaluate and determine whether the concept of a river walk is advisable and feasible, and if so, capitalize on existing opportunities. I would add to that the exact opposite as well. We do have a Riverwalk study that we are currently working on, but the goal of that is precisely what's written here, but also if it doesn't make sense, to finally put a bow on it and call that an idea that simply isn't going to work in Wheeling, just so that we don't have to have it be a ghost any longer. Review and adopt code language that supports the success of Restaurant Row as measured by the efficiency and ease of process for development. And finally, to create, implement, and support financial incentive opportunities designed to target restaurant business and activity. Now, these all sound great. Not for this evening, but it is then on staff to come up with the projects and the specific goals that support these. And you'll see later when we touch on governance, which is a key theme at the end, we did build in annual presentations to the board and to the public so that everyone knows how we spent the year associating our projects to complete these initiatives. So that's something that is going to work under each of these 3 high-stake strategies. So as we move along during the year, you will see effort from staff with specific programs to address each of these things, some of which may be requests for additional board policy. That's how each of these high-stake strategies work. And with that, then, I would ask President Horker if there are any questions on Restaurant Row. We address them.
No. Trustee Lang was first. Trustee Lang, is yours specific to this, or you have a general?
No, it's, it'll come at the end, so go ahead.
Okay. Trustee Papantos.
Thank you. Just a couple things, and I agree with your primary statement, John. Restaurant dining is no longer the same as it was in the 70s. People aren't going to flock to a Le Francais no matter how much we would like it. I don't think anybody would even be willing to open it at that point. But beyond that, part of what I'm asking is, there's some village-owned property along Milwaukee Avenue, specifically at Jeffrey and kind of across from Astor Place. Mm-hmm. If somebody came in with an entertainment venue that wasn't specifically a restaurant, how do we address it based on make decisions that reinforce compliance within the current zoning and master planning profiles, identifying this area as a restaurant focus? I don't want to give up on a good thing because it's not a restaurant, that it may be something related to restaurants but not quite restaurant.
Excellent question, and by no means are these the be-all and end-all of the idea of protecting Restaurant Row. I think your answer, the answer to your question is anything that supports Restaurant Row, which an entertainment use absolutely would. If there is an attraction that we can bring people to do in Wheeling and then go, while I'm here, I will go to fill-in-the-blank restaurant. There are a number of irons in the fire for entertainment uses up and down Milwaukee Avenue that do exactly that. While they are not restaurants, they are attracting people to come to Wheeling and then stay in Wheeling and spend their money in one of our restaurants.
Great. I just didn't want to limit Director Ainsworth's capacity to market anything along Restaurant Row, but especially the village-owned properties.
Absolutely, and there is a point of saturation too, where you couldn't have from Hinds to Lake Cook Road, 30 restaurants on the east side and 40 on the west side, and expect that they would all succeed. So there have to be supportive uses, and some of those inappropriate areas may be residential uses or retail uses. Whatever it is that are going to get people to Wheeling and spend their money in Wheeling on Restaurant Row. And some of that is a fluid answer for whatever we think works based on the specific project brought to us at any given time.
Great, thank you.
John, if I might, there are some things, and that's a very good point, I think. There are some things, as I listen to that, that we could tweak some of the language, particularly in the last policy. Like I've written something that would say something like, and that support the success of a vibrant Restaurant Row, which I think would give you what you're talking about. So I think if you don't mind, my intention would be to listen to what's going on here, and then when you see this again in 2 weeks, John and there may be some changes that we'll call out in the memo that hopefully will get at some of these things as you discuss this and come to some agreement on so.
Excellent point.
Thank you.
We good? Dundee Corridor.
Dundee Road Corridor, high stake strategy number 2. These are not ranked 1, 2, or 3. They are just 1, 2, and 3. Opportunity, development of the Dundee Road Corridor as a site of economic growth, increased property values, improved aesthetics, and desirable spaces. The underlying issue being economic prosperity and community vitality. I believe that listening to the comments from the board and certainly those made from the staff, that we all recognize the success that we have seen so far in the downtown plan. We finally have, although it was a little frustrating last year that we finally opened the movie theater and had restaurants ready to open, and then a pandemic hit. Nevertheless, you can see the success of Wheeling's strategic planning that began years ago with creating what we wanted as a downtown and then pursuing development that specifically fulfilled those needs. You can see that physically with the projects just to our west. You can see that, or at least you can sense it with the London Crossing project that is in the works, where they raised the old Sears outlet. We see the change happening. This strategy is meant to capture and protect the success of the corridor and build upon it. Wheeling's main east-west corridor is Dundee Road. Significant earlier development has, over time, become obsolete, and the aesthetic appearance of the area has suffered. Consequently, changes were and are needed to meet evolving transportation, aesthetic, and economic development standards for the properties on and adjacent to Dundee Road. The village has a history of taking an active role in roadway and land use improvements in order to create a better experience and provide economic opportunity for its residents along the corridor. Wheeling's efforts have been successful at the four corners of the Milwaukee Avenue intersection and at the Municipal complex and in the Wheeling Town Center. Consistent with the village's master land use plan, there remain opportunities to further revitalize and modernize targeted areas along the Dundee Road corridor, primarily west of the railroad tracks. Again, we have some adopted policies that begin to address this. There has been significant work by the board, by staff, by the Plan Commission in establishing what we want the west side of the tracks to look like, how we want to make sure that we continue the growth that started at Milwaukee Avenue and continue it all the way to London Crossing, the project, and London Bridge specifically. Wheeling is very unique in that we have very few east-west major thoroughfares, and only one of them really is the epicenter of our town, which is Dundee Road. The distance between Milwaukee and the London Bridge is also rather short. Therefore, I think there are opportunities that we can recognize that other communities can't because they are pocketed and we are not. Every time there is a success in our community, someone else can take that success and build on it. It started with the fountain, it went to Fresh Farms, it moved west to this complex, it moved west to the movie theater. It's now already happening on the west side of the tracks where we have a residential project happening at the old Orange Crush site. And we have one nearly ready to break ground, or at least ready, I should say, to come before the board in the London Crossings project. Those things all build off of each other. That is not common in most communities. From a village board policy standpoint, we've identified make decisions consistent with the conclusions contained within the master land use plan, require that all affected properties address improvements along Dundee Road, including traffic flow, hardscape, softscape, etc. Cooperate and coordinate with the state in order to realize roadway right-of-way improvements, and continue to judiciously use incentives, such as TIF, to promote desired land use mixes. Initiatives identify and pursue specific end users that meet the needs of and are consistent with the adopted downtown station area plan. Consider new financial incentives within the TIF districts to attract appropriate development and support improvements to existing businesses. Actively seek businesses that represent the cultural diversity of the community. Again, some of this is in the works, but there is a lot of additional effort that needs to be done in order to see the full vision of our community come to bear. And we think that these items recognize some of the challenges on Dundee Road, because it's not all, peaches and cream. We have an older community that needs to deal with some of the existing development in ways that continues to capture the history of the community instead of just replace it, but also modernize it and build on it. And we think that this Dundee Road corridor strategy captures those thoughts.
Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. And this is great, and I'm ecstatic that we're going to do something west of the tracks and recognize that area is prime for improvement. I don't want to neglect the area between Wheeling Avenue up to the creek. We have some buildings that are exactly what you said, tired and old because of their age. The AT&T building, which, or I think is it AT&T? It
Yes.
was at one.
Yeah, no, it is. Yes.
There's this big brick thing. I mean, we go through our beautiful fountain and, one Milwaukee place and Fresh Farms and everything's great. And then we kind of hit a roadblock and then we come up to the municipal campus and things are beautiful and, all this development. I know that area is no longer part of a TIF, but I don't want to neglect it either. I want to see what we can do as far as not forgetting about it, I guess.
Absolutely, and this
Got that,
really
Michael?
is meant to capture the entire east-west boundary of the village. It is more of a challenge without the assistance of a TIF district, but I also think, maybe with the exception being the AT&T building, because there's not much that would motivate, say, their modernization of that building. But the more successes we have, the more pressure it puts on existing landowners to take advantage of the opportunities that we're trying to provide through incentives where possible to update their buildings. So hopefully the more success we see, the more that is going to happen without even our insistence or through our aid, simply because of pride. And they don't want to be the last building standing. So,
thank you.
Trustee Krueger?
Thank you. Manager Spondilis, on the village board policy side of this slide, it says cooperate and coordinate with the state in order to realize roadway, right-of-way improvements. We've done a lot of that already, haven't we, just recently with 83 in Dundee and Northgate, of course, and McHenry, and I mean, other than Schoenbeck, which is a county road, and Dundee, what roadway improvements and right-of-way are we talking about?
I think it could be any opportunity where we can make an improvement, we simply do. That's really all this is meant to say. It calls out the state because now we're talking specifically about Dundee Road, but in general, our major thoroughfares, east, west, and north, south, are not, for the most part of the jurisdiction of the Village of Wheeling. We talked earlier about Wolf Road becoming part of the Village of Wheeling. This is just a reminder. Some of these things are in there just to make sure that the priority stays at the forefront, not necessarily that we've, pardon the pun, reinvented the wheel.
I like list writing, and my enjoyment is checking those things off the list. And I just thought that perhaps we might be able to check that one off.
We will, yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Rufato?
And that includes, like, Dundee Road, the physical road is in terrible shape.
Yes.
And that includes that too, correct? I mean, I mean, that's something sooner rather than later. It's patchwork. East of Milwaukee Avenue, they've improved it. West, in Palatine, they've improved it, but there's the stretch that nobody has looked at. Well, the state probably has said, oh, okay, eventually.
There's actually a plan. There was a plan to begin construction improving Dundee Road last year that was eventually put on pause at our request, along with the Village of Buffalo Grove, because of the Lake Cook Road project and
true.
because there was some additional work on Hintz Road. So there are projects allocated for improving Dundee Road. I believe at this point they are in the 2022 budget. I can certainly get back to you, but your point is absolutely spot on, that the road itself is a disaster. And that's the road I take home, and I'm surprised I haven't gone through a couple of tires as we get west of Arlington Heights. But agree. All right, and I promise the bulk of the conversation is about the high-stakes strategy. So before anyone turns to a pumpkin at midnight, we'll get through these. Financial strength, opportunity, financial sustainability. Underlying issue, assessing, cultivating, and balancing sources of municipal revenue. Wheeling is primarily a residential and industrial community. Given this fact and the village board's established level of core services, Wheeling has limited options for raising revenue needed to fund general operations. Unfunded mandates and growing pension obligations mean that there are fewer new dollars available to fund said core service operations. When weighed against an increased need for services, the dependency on property taxes becomes exacerbated. Therefore, the village board will prioritize projects and policies that provide revenue in addition to property taxes. When we started talking about this, we talked that some of these things may be a bit uncomfortable because they are some significant challenges. This is one of those things. It is a challenge to recognize Wheeling's revenue structure, and our revenue structure is based on property taxes. That is the way this community was established. That is not an excuse, and that is precisely what this high-stakes strategy is meant to address. That we need to, and we will do everything we can to find projects and avenues that will take the burden as much as possible off of the property taxes and provide us with gains that don't come directly from those property taxes. From a village board policy position, respond to market opportunities, such as recreational cannabis, through appropriate code updates. Support and incentivize the recruitment of industrial uses with a sales tax component. Capitalize on opportunities that are created or presented concerning the method of delivery of core services. In lieu of other options, maintain a willingness to increase the tax levy incrementally on an annual basis. Initiatives, review code and identify opportunities that would allow for enterprise expansion within existing uses. Review code and implement appropriate changes in order to capitalize on sales tax opportunities within the industrial sector. And finally, target recruitment towards retail industrial uses. There are a number of challenges in there. For example, attracting sales tax users in our industrial base is not really something that we can control. The only control that we have over that is the effort we have through our economic development outreach to try and bring people here that sell what they make. There's effort that can be made there, but there's not a lot of control there. We have seen, as you see in the first board policy, a change, an opportunity in recreational cannabis, which this board approved in the first round, and by the end of this month, we will begin to see the gains from that code change and policy change. There are opportunities that will present themselves, and this is just a reminder to not only capitalize on what presents itself, but also to be creative on the staff end and on any other opportunities that we can create to bring in people that sell. There's the fair share, what's it called?
Level the playing field.
Level, thank you very much. Level the playing field tax, which will help. So we're seeing a slight move towards the good for creating additional revenues. outside of property taxes. This entire strategy is to focus specifically on capitalizing any opportunity that comes to offset that burden.
Trustee Papantos? And then
Thank you.
Trustee Lang?
On the capitalize on sale, review code and identify opportunities that would allow for enterprise expansion within existing uses. Is that something like allowing video gaming in a restaurant that one would not normally expect? And I think it goes to your point that dining has changed.
Yes.
People want that little bit of entertainment, and it is a win-win situation for both the restaurant and the village. I mean, the sales tax or the gaming tax that we get is significant, to say
Yes.
the least. So is that what we're looking at?
Perfect example, yes.
And then the 6B that we just discussed at length, would a 6B help recruit the retail use opportunity for the industrial area?
Any of the incentive packages discussed this evening will help recruit business. I don't know that you could specifically identify sales tax generating businesses, but the more opportunities we have to fish, the more fish we're going to catch. So now that we have, this toolkit, we need to be aggressive in picking as opposed to, we always have been. So I don't want to say that we're just waiting for people to come here. The whole reason that the Village of Wheeling has an economic development department is because we have always been aggressive in this community with going after businesses, both new businesses and then going after those that are here to make sure that they stay here. That is not necessarily a priority that every community makes, and certainly not a priority that every community allocates resources to by having staff dedicated specifically to that purpose. So not exactly, but I think it helps is the answer to your question.
But I think also to strengthen Trustee Vito's point earlier, that a company coming in that may have a retail component with their industrial sector and doesn't have the money to put in $100,000 or even $50,000 of renovations, but will be adding to the village, I'm glad we did lighten that and take away any barriers.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Trustee Lang?
So speaking towards the retail industrial uses, do we have any ordinances that disallow outlet stores in the industrial area? For example, Sherwin-Williams, as an example, has a paint outlet store on the side. I don't know if they would be interested in something like that, but if they did. Or Stiegelmeyer Meats had an outlet store to sell their, leftover product.
Sure.
So anything against any of those outlet type operations in an industrial area?
There are some. I think that is an excellent place to begin a code review in order to address that exact issue, to make sure that there are reasons that you would prohibit some uses, but I think that is an excellent step one as far as code review goes.
And also, microbrews in industrial park as well. There's a retail component to that as well. And on its own, all those are little gains, but together it's huge. And so focus on that. There are some things that maybe we're not visualizing with the industrial retail portion of it. I know I pushed Peter pretty hard on that when we spoke about it, because it seems like that is a huge gain for communities when they actually sell the product that they make. And we seem to do very little of that. Then you get you don't just get property tax, there's sales tax, and it's very important to have, and so.
You're exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lang.
All right, as we discussed previously, this update does build on the success of the existing document, and by that I mean we kept in the key themes that were created last time. Those are residential life, financial strength, economic development, transportation and infrastructure, community image, and governance. Again, what we did here was refresh the goals that were assigned under each of these, and they are specific goals. And we'll go very quickly through one slide for each of the 6, just so that you know from where we are creating our assignments. Residential life, this also helps to explain, for those that are unfamiliar with the document, a little bit about what each of the key themes represent. Further connect people and places with additional and improved sidewalks and paths to increase neighborhood access. Seek to increase citizen engagement, awareness, and pride in order to involve residents in ways that give them a stake in the quality of community life. Encourage a good working partnership with other taxing districts, such as the school, the park, and the library, to address common issues affecting the districts in the village. Attract new residents and encourage pride of residency in Wheeling by providing diverse housing options that both match and accommodate changes to our existing demographic profile. I'd like to point out for the public that don't have this in front of them, underneath each of these 4 categories, there are specific goals assigned to each one of them, so there is some accountability. These aren't just words.
John?
Yes.
If I can add at this point, since you're talking about the things that are underneath each of these bullet points, there was a lot of time spent, as you all know, with Peter, between all of you, between department heads. We just talked about the key stake strategies, which really were the things that really rose to the top, and that's why those are key stakes. When Peter provided to me and to John the compendium of the comments, a lot of the detail in there that maybe didn't rise to the level of those key stake strategies were built into this section of the refresh document. So I don't want you to think that if you had something that maybe was kind of a one-off type thing, you might see that again in this document, but it really falls more into kind of the action plan type stuff that we're talking about. But I just think it's important to see how, that we didn't lose sight of those things. They are in here to the extent that, we could herd all the cats and nail the right jello to the wall on this stuff, so.
Thank you. There's also a multi-year plan associated with each of the themes. There's a vision statement as well that
Trustee Rufano has some jello that needs
Well,
to be on the wall.
you can go over the visions for residential life. There's a vision statement. When you're done with that, I have a comment. So
I wasn't going to read it.
Oh, okay. So
I can.
Well, if you weren't going to read it, don't worry about it, because my comment is around. You talk about existing meetings, establishing new, attending existing meetings. How do we address the person that was spewing misinformation tonight into here? Can we do that? That person has, probably a very small audience, but apparently some people have taken it to a new level, taking it to another level and addressing it in forums. And I want to nip those types of things in the bud. And I don't know how important that is, but it concerns me that we have and at least one ill-informed person in our village that is creating the wrong.
I think there are 2 answers to that. The first is I would not give that person more attention than they deserve. And second, when there is need to correct the record and educate the public on facts. We do exactly what we did this evening, which is politely and professionally present an opportunity for the public to seek information and better understand the information that they find. So sometimes that's a challenge because it feels as though we're dodging bullets a lot of time, meaning there's a lot of fire coming at us that we're not prepared for. This time, because it was so public, we were able to do that. But I think the answer is simply that we hold strong and we educate the public with the facts and hope that the same level of information distribution comes out of the information that we provide that is factual as it does when it is not.
Thank you. Understand. Yep.
Financial strength. Review and reestablish appropriate strategies and policies to balance realistic expectations concerning revenue streams with appropriate revenue growth assumptions. Make strides in efforts to influence State of Illinois lawmakers with respect to the costs of pensions, unfunded mandates, etc. Reaffirm commitment to pay-as-you-go financing of infrastructure and equipment needs, and explore alternate revenue sources and cost-sharing opportunities with other government bodies and agencies. You will note that some of these are carryovers from the original document because I'm not sure that they won't always be important enough to identify. But again, the goals that are associated under each of these four categories and then the multi-year plan that is associated with financial strength address the comments, as Mr. Crotty said, that you all had, that the department heads had, and what we simply recognize as necessary moving forward. Economic development. Build upon the success of the Wheeling Town Center through implementation of the adopted downtown station area plan. Take an active role in creating roadway and land use improvements and provide economic opportunity along the Dundee Road corridor. Enhance Restaurant Row and bolster the Milwaukee Avenue corridor accordingly. Fill vacant retail space, develop available sites, and redevelop properties where appropriate. You will notice that there is a lot of coordination between the specific goals within these key strategies to the three high-stake strategies that we discussed at the beginning. I think that makes sense because that's how you have accountability that addresses both structural issues and whatever may come up during any 5-year strategic plan update. Transportation and infrastructure. Expand beautification initiatives. Strive to minimize the impact of new development on the existing transportation network in Wheeling and address regional mass transit. Very interesting times to be discussing anything related to transportation and infrastructure as 2020 created a whole new, I think, reality for traffic patterns and even mass transit. That is going to be a topic of conversation, I think, for the next several years, and we have to be very careful how we manage any new projects as it relates to, as we always have been, as it relates to particularly vehicle traffic on Dundee Road.
Trustee Papantos has a question.
Thank you. How do we, go backwards. How do we address minimize the impact of new development on the existing transportation network in Wheeling? Whenever we had the Uptown 500 project and the comments that you hear in social media or wherever is, we don't need any more traffic on Dundee Road. I don't know if people realize that if not built here, it's going to be built farther down the road, and we're still going to have that amount of traffic on Dundee Road. But how do we address it, and how do we minimize the impact?
Great question. I think there are a couple of answers. One, both Uptown 500 and Wheeling Town Center are both transit-oriented developments, which means they are intended to rely on the rail service. Now, what that looks like, again, coming, in 2021, 2022, I don't know.
I can interrupt you on this. I met that unicorn. Yeah. Some customers came to the shop, and they bought something. It was a larger plant. Doesn't matter what they bought, but they were very certain about having to get their stuff today, because today is the day they rented the car, because they lived at the town center, and they commuted downtown, and this was just last summer. So it was that exact scenario that this development was created for. It does exist. They didn't have a car. They rented a car specifically so they could run around and get all their pickups done for the day, and then they just stayed at, or however they did it. Ubered, I don't know. But it's actually working. I was happily amazed.
And that is exactly the second answer, which is, it's a good transition to the second answer, which is create a walkable community. So as these developments, these residential developments occur, make sure that there are supportive retail end users within walking distance. So say you lived at Town Center, Uptown, would you walk to Jimenez? Would you walk to a restaurant there? That kind of thing helps alleviate some. Certainly it's not going to solve the world's problems here on Dundee Road, but it does help. The more that people stay put, the more options they have, the more that it alleviates traffic concerns, and the more that they're spending their money in Wheeling and not somewhere else.
Thank you.
Community image, enhance the village's cyber identity, employ a comprehensive municipal marketing strategy, and promote positive aesthetics and community pride by enforcing property maintenance and appearance standards that have a desired effect on property values. This is important because this is both a look at ourselves, what we can do in our presentation, as well as our role as enforcement agents for our community. This is a difficult one because, of course, writing tickets for property maintenance issues is certainly nobody's favorite thing to do. It does create a strain between the municipality and its residents, but if there is a goal, then we need to meet it appropriately by holding people accountable. And I think that there have been some necessary but still appropriate changes made to our code, and more to come. We are going to begin a comprehensive code review that can address some of this as well. And as far as some of the things under community image, you've seen, obviously we finally have completed our new village entrance sign program, but as far as the cyber identity, things change in an instant, and we need to make sure that the village is up to speed on whatever may come regarding social media. Governance, use the budget, the budget process to reflect the vision of this strategic plan, implement the strategic plan, promote and encourage diversity in hiring, engage at the elected official level with other government and private agencies to promote common goals and build alliances, and provide for succession planning so that others are ready, willing, and able to serve. Governance was the last of the 6 key themes. Personally, I think governance is, and everything that it represents, is one of the most important, not discussed enough, but how we do things is as important as what we do. And this definitely covers some of that. And that is the update to the strategic plan. If there are other questions that we didn't address during the presentation, we can do so now.
Trustee Rufato. And then Trustee Lang.
In governance, you said engage at the elected official level. Is that a generic term for the legislature? Or is elected official are us engaging other government and private agencies?
Both.
Both, okay.
I think the more engaged you are with your fellow school board, park board, library board members, the better the community will be. And the more that we collectively are engaged with our state elected officials, the more opportunities we can create.
Okay.
And then Trustee Lang?
Thank you. So process for this, 2 weeks from now, you're going to do some cleanup on a few things here, not too many, and we're going to vote on this.
Yes.
So this process, like all the strategic plans, and it was a pleasure working with Peter on this as well, this was a fantastic exercise. It was, I think he had to get me off the phone. I was on there for hours and hours. And I'm sure the rest of us took it the same way. It really goes to show you that, well, first of all, this will be then posted on our website and very visible for every resident to see should they have questions on it, and I'm sure a lot of them do.
Yes, it will be printed, it will be put up on social media, it will be prominently displayed on our website. Under governance, where I had said implement the strategic plan, the goal is provide annual written status reports to the village board and engage open discussion between the board and staff regarding the status of the plan every 24 months. So that's the accountability factor, but I think it builds into your point, which is this is a great document full of wonderful things. Now we have to make, it can't just be a piece of paper or a link on a website. It's a living, breathing document that we have to nurture and we have to discuss. And it has to be a priority for all of us whenever any decisions are made, either at my level or at yours. And that's some of the accountability that's built into this.
The police department did an excellent job when they were last year putting policies in place and putting that on social media. Or not policies in place, but what policies that they had over certain things. And they put that on social media in sections, once a week. And so perhaps that's something that we can think about with this as well, because I think it's a lot to take in all at once. Yes. But if you piecemeal it out, like, in sections, I think it would be very helpful. And as I was saying, it was very exciting to work on this. There's a lot of great things happening in this town. I have to speak to that lame statement that the wheel is broken. This proves that there is no broken wheel in this town, ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lang.
Okay. Thank you. I know this went a tad long, but this is a very important document for the village, so well worth the time. And thank you, Mr. Burchard and Mr. Crotty.
We have a couple of items that got drug over to the end, and then I see they were important enough that nobody hung around for them.
Will we reread them?
Please. We'll do one at a time.
Okay, the new 13E is resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving the purchase of a license plate recognition system from Vigilant Solutions LLC in an amount not to exceed $36,260 in FY 2021.
Questions?
Would you like me to explain it or no?
No.
For the reason that it was moved from consent to new business, I make a motion we approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's Trustee Vogel. Trustee Lang?
Yes, sorry.
Roll call?
Oh, you're asking me. Yes, I second it.
Okay, should I do roll call?
Do a roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. F?
11F, which is now 13F, is resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving upgrades to 4 computer parking terminals by Total Parking Solutions in an amount not to exceed $14,880 in FY 2021.
Anybody need anything on that?
So moved.
Trustee Kruger makes the motion.
Rafata?
Sorry?
Who's
Trustee
the one?
Kruger.
Kruger made the motion.
The other Rafata.
Rafata.
Second.
Pantos.
Roll call?
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Raffato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. Commissioner Klump? From the Park District, all quiet in the office, hiding behind your snowman mask. Sense of normal. So you came here for a sense of normality. Wow, damaged creature. Oh. Thank you for enduring the evening with us. Thank you for coming. I happened to bump into Mr. Friedman, and the CMX has a plan for when they're going to open already. There's some movie coming.
Yes. I know the answer to this, but since I have forgotten it,
Yeah.
Director Ainsworth, if you would.
The tentative opening date is April 30th in anticipation of Black Widow, the
That was it.
Marvel movie.
Yes.
There was email communication that verified that last week.
Awesome.
Well, and while we're at it, I believe it's public information. It's about to be, since I'm outing it. City Works?
Tentative opening date is March 15th, and they did allude to that a little bit in the Daily Herald. So I'm waiting every day for their website to get updated for March 15th.
Excellent.
Can we ask about the other restaurant in Town Center?
Mia's or Meat and Potato?
Meat and Potatoes.
Tentative opening date is March 30th.
Thank you.
While we're at it, how about Dollar Tree?
They're moving quick.
Probably 2 or 3 weeks out.
Really?
Yep, they're flying.
And Hatch Dispensary will be open by the end of the month.
Excellent.
And use Mandarin, while we're doing this.
Use Mandarin, the permit has been issued. We anticipate early summer.
Cool.
All right, I'm out.
Okay. Good. I got make a coffee and a bottle of water in me. So, on a sadder note, I would like to recognize the passing of the former President Argyris' father, Sam Argyris. Unfortunate, certainly saddening when a patriarch of a family passes. So, our sympathies go out to the Argyris family. Clerk Simpson, you're going to follow that.
Okay. The League of Women Voters, LWV, of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove will be holding candidate forum for the Village of Wheeling on March 6, 2021. The forum for candidates running for village president will be from 1 to 2 p.m. The forum for candidates running for village trustee will be held from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. If interested or concerned, can find the Zoom registration link through the LWV social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, or the calendar on their website, http://lwvah.org/. The calendar can be found under the About tab. Mail ballot applications for the April 6th consolidated election are available until April 1st. Applications can be obtained directly from www.cookcountyclerk.com. For those who do not have access to a computer, please please call 847-499-9082 to request a mail ballot application. Mail ballots must be postmarked by April 6th. Voter registration deadlines are as follows. You can register online until March 21st at www.cookcountyclerk.com. In-person registration at Village Hall ends March 9th. If you plan to register in person, please bring 2 forms of identification, one with your current address.
Thank you.
Can I ask Trustee Papantos a question?
Please.
There's no early voting?
No, there is early voting.
When is?
Early voting starts Monday, March
22nd.
But where in Wheeling?
22nd.
It is actually, according to the Cook County site, going to be at the library.
The library said no.
The library had said
They
no
changed their mind?
originally, but it is listed on the county site right now. I did check it.
When they called me, they said that the library they didn't want to do it this year, so I was just wondering.
Right.
So it's the library, okay.
That's what the county is saying at this point.
Okay.
And just in case somebody raises a red flag, since I am running for election, I am not an election judge this year. I just wanted to get that clear.
Okay.
Good choice.
For this election.
Anybody else? Well, sorry.
That didn't count for me.
You seemed like you were done.
But I answered my question. I just wanted to say 2 thank yous. Director Kaplan, you have the ability to take something that most people would find totally either I can't understand a word of what he's saying or boring and make it to a point that we all know what you're talking about. Thank you, because these rumors and innuendos that are flying around are ridiculous. It's great to know the true facts and that our village is in excellent financial shape. Thank you. And Manager Spondilis and Manager Crotty, or Director Crotty, sorry. Is that a promotion or? Yeah. And staff as a whole, this strategic plan is excellent. Thank you so much for putting it together and listening to my questions again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we're done. If there's nothing else to be said, you do have before you the bills for January 28th through February 24th, 2021. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Motion trustee Vogel, second trustee
Second.
Kruger. Roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. We do have an executive session this evening for the purposes of pending probable and/or imminent litigation. Therefore, I need a motion to recess into executive session and adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Motion Papantos, second. Rufato. Roll call, please.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your evening with us. Well, most of you. Well done.